Chapter 1170. Unlike those creatures who were obviously still children, Han Fei could tell that this red falcon was an intermediate explorer the moment it appeared. When he was in the 100,000 Mountains, Han Fei had seen a lot of sky creatures. This red falcon, also known as the red life falcon, was one of the few fire attribute birds. Their strength was very balanced, their bodies were not weak, their claws were sharp, and their beaks were comparable to high-quality divine weapons. When the red falcon saw Han Fei, it tilted its head. "Senior Thousand Wood, where did you come from?" The old tray and shook the treetop on its head and said in an old voice, "Leafless, let me come here alone. I'm not here to ask for help." The red falcon looked at Han Fei for a while. A peak-level law enforcer. He shouldn't be slow. In that case, come with me. It's a long way, but can I meet the queen? I'm not sure. Han Fei nodded with a smile, thinking, can I meet the king directly? I don't know if old Han has left any backup plans here, but in any case, the creatures of the waterwood heaven don't seem to have a bad attitude towards me. At least, they aren't hostile. Han Fei cupped his hands at the old tray ant. "Senior, I'll take my leave first." A boy shouted, "Big brother, will you come back?" Han Fei smiled. "Maybe." Swish. The red falcon directly flew out, not stopping for even a moment, heading straight for the sky. In the blink of an eye, it passed through the obstacles of branches. On purpose? Han Fei saw that this red falcon came on a teleportation array. Besides, the red life falcon was obviously not the fastest among the sky creatures. However, all falcon-type creatures were not slow in their flying speed. Han Fei smiled. "Let's compete then." Swish. The phantom glass wings spread out, and before the teenagers were surprised, Han Fei disappeared with a swish. The red falcon only intended to test Han Fei. After all, Han Fei came with the token of the leafless tree and was considered a guest. However, not every guest could meet the real master of the waterwood heaven. This boy was a peak-level law enforcer and was too weak. If he couldn't even pass Han Fei's test, how could he meet the Life Queen? However, the moment Han Fei unfolded the phantom glass wings, the red falcon was slightly surprised. Could humans have wings too? Below, the youths and Hong Kaer were astonished. "Grandpa Tree, he has wings. That person has wings." Hong Kaer screamed, "Grandpa Tree, that Han Fei is so fast." The old Trent's eyebrows twitched as he laughed out loud. If he didn't have any strength, how could he have come to the waterwood sky from the Yin-Yang heaven? All right, let's get back to class. Where were we? Kestrel was stunned. This human was so fast. He was clearly only at the peak of the law enforcer level. Although he had only used 30% of his speed, it was still not something a human could compare to. At this moment, Han Fei followed the red falcon with a smile, about 2 or 3 meters behind, seemingly at ease. "Humph! I want to see how fast you are." The red falcon continued to accelerate, directly reducing its speed to 50%, like a red beam of light rushing into the sky. Moreover, there were tree trunk barriers along the way. At such a high speed, it was almost impossible for an ordinary person to catch up. However, the next moment, the red falcon was surprised to find that Han Fei was still 2 or 3 meters behind it. At this moment, the red falcon stopped underestimating him. After all, in the endless years, there were only a handful of people who could come to the waterwood sky from the Yin-Yang heaven. It was almost impossible for a non-peerless heavenly talent to do so. Since this human was here, he must have some skills. The red falcon accelerated all the way. 60%, 70%, 80%. When the red falcon reached its maximum speed, it realized that Han Fei was still able to keep up with it. It sighed. Is this the peak of law enforcer? Besides, the red falcon found that Han Fei's eyes were darting around. At such a high speed, he still had time to observe the surrounding environment, and Han Fei was no less surprised than the red falcon. He was surprised because this cloud sea divine tree was too tall. There were really a lot of creatures living on this tree. He saw legendary big spiders hanging in the air, giant moths lying on the branches, and some branches were so thick that there were even many tree houses built on them. Of course, when the red falcon and Han Fei were rushing at full speed, many creatures cast their senses at them. A giant python was surprised. Human beings? How can there be such ugly human beings? A big centipede, supporting its body, muttered, "Are they sick? They are all explorers. Why are they still flying? If they don't take the teleportation array, they can just tear the void." Han Fei also looked at a human powerhouse. He found that the adult woman, with long hair tied up, wearing a green battle suit, holding a longbow in her hand, was also looking at him. At this moment, the Red Falcon said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "Boy, can you go faster?" Han Fei smiled. "I think so." The Red Falcon asked, "Can you also tear the void?" Han Fei thought for a moment and nodded slightly. He could tear the void, but that was different from the heavenly void divine walking technique. At the moment of tearing the void, his speed would be slower than that of a real explorer. If it was in a battle, it was not suitable to use. Besides, the way the two entered the void was different. The explorer directly tore the void, while Han Fei relied on speed to find the weak point of the void and penetrate it. These were two completely different concepts. The Red Falcon roared, "Tear the void with me." Chilla. The Red Falcon disappeared, but Han Fei didn't panic. The heavenly void divine walking technique was different from tearing the void. He could capture some changes in the void. But tearing the void didn't care about these changes. Chilla. In the darkness, Han Fei was only a little slower than the Red Falcon. But this little distance might actually be more than 500 kilometers away. Therefore, Han Fei activated the agility of wind. Swish. Seeing that Han Fei really caught up, the Red Falcon immediately confirmed Han Fei's strength. As a peak-level law enforcer, he was so fast that he could tear the void. No human from the water would heaven could do that. The Red Falcon thought to himself, "Sure enough, those who can come from the Yin-Yang heaven are not ordinary people. In this case, I'd better take him to see the king." In fact, the explorers tearing the void was not omnipotent. When they walked in the dark void, they actually just set a target point for themselves. Before reaching this target point, they couldn't observe the real situation in the outside world. But if it was a chase, they could set the target as the target point and appear with the target. At the moment they appeared, they could choose whether to go out or not. If the outside world was dangerous, they could continue to walk in the void. Of course, Han Fei felt that this rule might not apply when they reached the peak-level explorer level. At that level, they were much stronger than ordinary advanced explorers, and it was possible that they could see the outside world in the dark void. About half an hour later, the Red Falcon said, "Get ready to go out." Swish. Swish. The Red Falcon stopped in the void. At that moment, the Red Falcon's sharp claws tore the void, and a flash of white light appeared. Han Fei's eyes flickered slightly. He rarely entered the void, so when he saw the Red Falcon's operation, he had some experience. Condensing all the power in one point, then vibrating and tearing the void in the vibration. Han Fei looked as casual as usual, as if he had known it a long time ago. The Red Falcon glanced at him. "Let's go out." Swish. Swish. The moment Han Fei appeared in the void, several perceptions swept over him. Han Fei was shocked. A venerable? He was too familiar with this feeling. When a venerable's perception swept over, there would inevitably be a sense of threat and oppression. On the contrary, even peak-level explorers didn't give Han Fei such a strong feeling. When Han Fei looked around, he found that he seemed to have appeared in a square. If it weren't for the wooden branches under his feet, he would have wondered if he had arrived on land. In front of Han Fei, the most visually shocking thing was a skyscraping wall that he couldn't see the end of at a glance. Looking up, he found that there seemed to be a roof at an extremely high place. Wow. The trunk? Han Fei's eyes moved slightly. This could only be the trunk. It looked like a fucking city wall. And the thing above his head was probably the other branches. On the trunk, there were complicated array patterns engraved. Han Fei certainly recognized that it was a teleportation array. The Red Falcon said softly, "Venerable, an envoy from the Yin-Yang heaven, holding a leafless wood, requests to see Her Majesty." In front of the teleportation array, a big golden bird appeared. Wait. Han Fei's pupils constricted. That's not a bird, but the bat? The bat didn't show much of its body, but it folded its wings and turned into a human form, a cold man in a golden battle suit. However, the cold man's eyes were covered with a golden mask, giving off an extremely cold feeling. Wait. Chilla. The Venerable didn't move at all. He turned around and stepped into the teleportation array. Han Fei was a little surprised. Isn't tearing the void faster than a teleportation array? The Red Falcon said, although the Divine Palace is indeed on the top of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, since you are from the Yin Yang Heaven, you should know that the Divine Palace is in a space crack. It can't be seen in the real world. Han Fei realized that the Divine Palace turned out to be built in a space crack. No wonder so many people couldn't find it. Immediately an idea came to him. I know. I'm just surprised that this senior can turn into a human form. Seeing that Han Fei was surprised, the Red Falcon immediately said, it seems that there are no other races in the Yin Yang Heaven. When you reach the realm of a Venerable, it's up to you whether you can turn into a human or not. It's not difficult to find a way to turn into a human. Han Fei was a little shocked. No wonder he saw the water fairy and the heavenly crystal in the 100,000 mountains in human form. So that's how it is. Sure enough, the stronger one was, the more means he could master. A Venerable could be reborn from a single drop of blood. This method was no less powerful than Little Fatty's resurrection method. The two of them waited here for half an hour. The teleportation array flashed slightly. The Venerable Bat looked at Han Fei carefully and said leisurely, Her Majesty said yes. Chapter 1171. Han Fei couldn't help but be a little excited. The Immortal Palace. This was the place that countless strong masters in the Thousand-Star City dreamed of entering. And he had the opportunity to go in just because he crossed the demonic plant channel and came to the Waterwood Heaven. The Venerable Bat looked at Han Fei. What's your name? Han Fei cupped his hands. Han Fei. The Red Sparrow tilted her head and looked at Han Fei unkindly. How can I not revere the Venerable? Han Fei smiled. I'm on the invincible path. I can be polite, but I really can't bring myself to call the Venerable Bat Master. The Venerable Bat didn't seem to care. Go in. It doesn't matter to me, but you need to revere the Queen. You can't underestimate a king. Han Fei smiled and nodded. Han Fei walked past the Venerable, took a deep breath, and stepped in without hesitation. After Han Fei went in, the Red Sparrow said, Master, this person, the Venerable Bat said lightly, this person is extraordinary. The real strong have always been proud. Don't take him seriously. In Han Fei's opinion, the 36 immortal palaces were built at the same time, but they were divided and ruled by the strong. Therefore, as long as he saw the Waterwood Immortal Palace, he should be able to know what the Yin Yang Palace looked like. Swish. Han Fei's body rushed forward slightly as if he was pushed forward by a gentle force. He glanced back subconsciously and found no one. It should be the power of the teleportation array itself. The moment Han Fei came in, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. The spiritual energy was abnormal. As a spirit gatherer, he could easily feel the abnormal fluctuations of spiritual energy. However, the Immortal Palace was too abnormal. To put it bluntly, the density of spiritual energy in the Tree Heaven was higher than that in the Yin Yang Heaven, probably because of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. But it wasn't much higher. There was no such thing as a possibility of it being several times higher. But the moment Han Fei entered the Immortal Palace, the Level 9 spiritual heritage automatically began to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy, and many spiritual energy vortexes appeared around him. It's at least 10 times more than the outside world. Han Fei was shocked. That was fucking unbelievable. What kind of concept was this? Even if a person didn't cultivate here, just by breathing here, their strength would increase gradually. Sensing the difference of spiritual energy, Han Fei looked around. Han Fei found that there were all kinds of spiritual herbs and orchards here. He casually looked around and saw a spirit fruit. Information appeared in his eyes. Name, Fruit of Agility, Introduction. It grows in a place with extremely dense spiritual energy. It has the magical effect of improving one's physique, lightening one's body, and increasing one's speed. Level, Heaven, Quality, Low grade contains spiritual energy greater than 556,000 points. Effect: directly consuming it will increase a large amount of spiritual energy and contain a small amount of chaotic energy. It cannot be consumed by those below the law enforcer realm, and it is ineffective for those above the supremacy realm. It can be consumed repeatedly. Han Fei's eyes widened. A heaven-level spiritual fruit could be eaten repeatedly? The water deity had once told him about the agility fruit. She said that it was extremely difficult for this fruit to grow and that its various effects were secondary. Its main effect was that strand of primal chaos energy, which was effective even for supremacies. And Han Fei saw 7 or 8 such spiritual fruits as he glanced around. In addition to this spiritual fruit, there were all kinds of other fruits. For example, Han Fei saw an old ginseng, which was originally above the ground, but it seemed to have sensed Han Fei's arrival and drilled into the ground with a swish. Han Fei looked around, only to find that he was in a super large orchard. At the center of this large orchard, there was a luxuriant tree, which was extremely thick. The branches and vines in front of the tree were either twisted into pillars or hanging from the sky. While Han Fei was in a daze, he saw a young girl in a colorful dress stride to him in a few steps. The girl suddenly blinked her eyes and looked at Han Fei curiously. Han Fei couldn't sense any pressure from the girl. She was just like an ordinary person, so he couldn't help but ask tentatively, "Queen, life?" Poochie. The girl couldn't help but laugh. Then she quickly pursed her lips and said meticulously, "Sir, I'm just the maid of Her Majesty. Sir, please come with me." She came quickly, but she didn't leave quickly. The big tree seemed to be not far away, but when Han Fei really started walking, he found that there was something wrong with this part of the journey. It seemed that there was a spatial law attached to him, and there was a technique that lengthened the walking process. The girl glanced at Han Fei. "Sir, are you from the Yin-Yang heaven?" Han Fei nodded with a smile. The girl asked again, "Has the heavenly Dharma eye of the Yin-Yang heaven disappeared?" Han Fei's face suddenly changed slightly, and he looked at the girl. Did she know that the Yin-Yang heaven was now being monitored by the heavenly Dharma eye? The girl said with a smile, "Others may not know, but this is the Waterwood Immortal Palace. Her Majesty knows everything. Jingnu, don't talk too much. Turn the world's end near hand array around." Suddenly, Han Fei heard a particularly gentle voice. The voice was very soft. Just from her voice, Han Fei felt that this life queen should be a very gentle queen. The girl called Jing, stuck out her tongue slightly and waved her hand gently. Han Fei keenly sensed that the space seemed to have changed. Sure enough, this step took him a long way, and Han Fei keenly sensed that some soil on the roadside was trembling slightly. Everything is entering the array? Jing was slightly surprised. "You don't look old, but your attainments in arrays are not shallow." Han Fei immediately sweated. "My attainments? Everything can enter the array, and that control is simply inhuman. It's not something that I can draw by myself at all. Not to mention him, even old Jiang didn't have this ability. This type of formation required an extremely high level of control over the divine soul." When Han Fei walked 1,000 meters away from the big tree, he found that some tree ants were either standing still or gently turning the ground, as if they were growing flowers and protecting the grass. Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. "Corpse puppets?" Jing glanced at Han Fei curiously. "You know this too?" Han Fei smiled lightly. "I've met them before." Needless to say, these corpse puppets should be dead tree ants and insects that had been refined into corpse puppets. However, in terms of strength, these corpse puppets were probably at least at the explorer level. This was not what Han Fei felt, but what he saw from the state of their bodies. Jing said, "Ordinary people are not allowed to enter the Divine Palace. You are the first person to enter the Divine Palace as a non-venerable. What a lucky guy." Han Fei thought of something. Non-venerables have to enter the Divine Palace? Does it mean that venerables have the strength to enter the Divine Palace? Han Fei remained calm and didn't respond. He broke through the vines and the twisted vines and trees and moved to the trunk of the big tree. But when Han Fei reached the trunk, his pupils constricted. Is this still the Cloud Sea Divine Tree? Yes, he could see some clues from a big tree and knew that it was the root of the tree. But the trunk in front of him seemed to be half unearthed. In other words, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree passed through the space crack and grew directly into the Divine Palace. Han Fei was a little shocked. Good heavens, what kind of tree is this? It's a bit too awesome. Jinger said, what's there to be surprised about? The Cloud Sea Divine Tree itself is also a king-level creature. Okay, don't be so surprised. Behave when you see the queen. You look a bit. Han Fei. Before Han Fei finished digesting the news, he was hit by Jing Er's words. What's wrong with my looks? My figure, I'm not bad. But when Han Fei thought of the humans he saw just now, he couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Are the genes of the humans here all good? Are the offspring especially good-looking? Forget it. Han Fei now knew that the Cloud Sea Divine Tree was also a king-level creature, which was horrifying. In other words, there were two kings in the waterwood sky. This strength was a bit too horrifying. After taking a few more steps and passing through the tree barrier, Han Fei suddenly raised his head, only to see that there was a dense glow in the sky. Vaguely, he could see that there seemed to be a tree palace. It seemed that a particularly elegant and beautiful palace had been built on the branches of the tree. Jing'er bowed and said, Your Majesty, the guest is here. From above, the extremely gentle voice just now said gently, Okay, come up. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed, and Jing'er waved her hand in front of his eyes and said, Don't be in a daze. Her Majesty asked you to come up. Don't disrespect her. Who? Han Fei took a deep breath. He was going to meet the king, so he was a little nervous. Under Jing'er's slightly amused expression, Han Fei stepped in the air, trying to balance himself and calm down. With a faint smile on his face, he slowly disappeared into the dense glow. But when Han Fei passed through the glow, he was surprised to find that there was no palace here. This was clearly a quaint open courtyard with a delicate and elegant garden. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a small rising spring, from which gurgling green liquid was gushing out. At that moment, Han Fei sensed endless vitality, and a term naturally popped up in his mind, water of life. And in the corner of the courtyard, a graceful, almost perfect, gentle woman in a green cloud silk dress with her hair casually tossed over her shoulder was facing her back. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed and immediately cupped his hands. Han Fei from the Yin-Yang sky greets the queen. Chapter 1172. Han Fei stood there for quite a while and saw that the Life Queen was stirring the soil and watering it. Wait a minute. Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. What's that? Is that a Taoist aura? Tao aura and spirit awakening fluid were two completely different things. If it had to be related, it was because the mysterious Tao, if diluted, might produce a large amount of spirit awakening fluid. The Life Queen didn't ignore him. Although she didn't look back, she said in a low voice, No one can enter the Yin-Yang heaven, right? Han Fei's eyelids twitched. However, the other party was a king tier. He could brag in front of a group of children, but he had to brag in front of a king. Han Fei said calmly, Yes, no one can enter yet. The Life Queen continued, The waterwood sky is quite close to the Yin-Yang sky. You said that there was a great battle between venerables a few years ago, so it should be true. 3 venerables perished? The humans are at war with the Sea Tribe? Han Fei was shocked. You even know this? Han Fei bit the bullet and said, It's not that human beings started a war with the sea race. It's just that some greedy venerables were stirring up trouble in order to compete for the opportunity to become a king, so I killed a few of them. Destroy it? The Life Queen slowly turned around. Her delicate face, which was like a hibiscus emerging from clear water, dazzled Han Fei. If one really had to describe it, it would be that her skin was smooth and creamy, her aura was like an orchid, her hands were soft and supple, and her body was delicate and charming. His eyes were like an ancient well without any ripples, deep and soul-stirring. As soon as their eyes met, Han Fei's brain slowed down and he was a little stunned. At this moment, Han Fei's heart seemed to be knocked by someone, and he finally came back to his senses. The old tortoise's voice seemed illusory as he reminded, "Your strength is too low. Unless the king is willing, you cannot look straight at the king." The Life Queen was slightly surprised. Han Fei seemed to be shaken by some kind of power and came back to his senses. However, the Life Queen didn't really mind. She only said indifferently, "You're young, but you talk big. It's not like you were the one who killed them." Sure enough, humans have always been like this. Although they were the most suitable creatures for cultivation, they were also the creatures with the most complicated thoughts. "I think this matter has something to do with you, right?" Han Fei lowered his head, not because he wanted to lower it, but because he couldn't look at it directly. Han Fei smiled bitterly. It seemed like he couldn't hide anything from a king-tier expert. Seeing Han Fei's reaction, the Life Queen continued, "Your father came once and asked for 2 things and a promise from me. But the price has fallen on you. Listen to me first." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "What?" "I'll return the item that old Han asked for." Han Fei's expression remained unchanged and he listened humbly. The Life Queen said, "The promise he made to me was that if anyone from the Yin-Yang heaven comes in the future, I must help them unconditionally as long as they don't harm the Waterwood heaven. And the price is that this person needs to help Shui Mutian completely eliminate the threat of the sea race." Han Fei frowned. This old Han must have thought this through before setting up the trap. He knew that if he wanted to become a king, he would have to stand against the aristocratic families. Therefore, he had sought an escape route in advance in the Shuemu heaven. However, was this price enough to help Shui Mutian completely resolve the threat of the sea race? That would be a bit difficult for him now. On the Yin-Yang heaven, he hadn't even taken care of the 10,000 Demon Valley yet. Maybe there would be another royal city later. What about Shui Mutian? Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Queen, what kind of sea race threats are there in Shui Mutian?" The Life Queen smiled lightly. "The 2 sea race royal cities are guarded by at least 1 deep sea giant demon." Wow! Han Fei was stunned for a moment and subconsciously looked up. He had forgotten that he could look at a king-tier expert directly this time. Anyway, he was shocked. "Deep sea giant demon?" The Life Queen nodded, folded her hands, and looked at Han Fei. "Once the 2 royal cities are destroyed, the other troubles will no longer be troubles." The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "What do you mean? Apart from the deep sea giant demon, there are other troubles?" Han Fei didn't feel good. Is old Han trying to trick me? The deep sea giant demon. That's a super expert equivalent to a king-tier expert. If I had this ability, why would I need to come to the Waterwood heaven to make a breakthrough? As if knowing what Han Fei was thinking, the Life Queen smiled faintly. "Don't worry, I don't want you to take action now. You just need to agree to this matter now. Your father bet that you will become a king-tier expert, so as long as you dare to agree, you must complete this matter if you want your path to be smooth. Otherwise, your path as a king will be cut off." Gulp. Han Fei took a deep breath and asked in confusion, "Do you believe that I can become a king-tier expert?" The Life Queen said indifferently, "Before, I only heard about your father's plans. Now that I've met him in person, I can take a gamble. Anyway, what your father wants and this promise are not difficult for me." Han Fei understood. In other words, old Han knew very well that if he could really become a king-tier expert, the reward he would give would be far greater than what Shuemu Heaven paid. Han Fei smiled bitterly. "Since things have come to this, I'll agree." It was not his turn not to agree. Old Han had already taken his things, and Shuemu Heaven had also come over. He had basically done all 3 things. How could he go back on his word? The Life Queen continued to fiddle with a red flower in front of her. The flower shook its body, but she said casually, "How long can you stay in Shuemu Heaven?" Han Fei thought for a moment. 3 years at most. The Life Queen nodded slightly. "I'll give you 3 years. During this period, you can freely break through to the explorer level and integrate into any domain of Shuemu Heaven. However, Shuemu Heaven will not participate in the battle of Yin-Yang Heaven in 3 years. That's your business, and it's also a test for you." Han Fei made up his mind. "Okay." The maidservant who had led the way for her just now had silently appeared beside her. Your Majesty. While fiddling with the flowers and plants, the Life Queen said indifferently, take him to the human territory and give him the venerable token. In the future, he can do whatever he wants, but he doesn't have to deliberately help him. After saying that, the Life Queen thought for a moment and said to Jing, when Han Fei transcends the tribulation, you will personally protect him. Jing was shocked and looked at Han Fei in astonishment. Who on earth is this person? A peak-level law enforcer with a venerable token? And he can do whatever he wants? Does he need me to protect him during a tribulation? However, Jing immediately replied respectfully, Yes, Your Majesty. Jing looked at Han Fei. Let's go. After leaving the courtyard, Han Fei glanced at this place. Unfortunately, he didn't have a chance to take a look at the entire Shuemu heaven. However, Han Fei was sure that there were definitely a lot of strong masters here. Besides, Shuemu heaven also used corpse puppets. Yin-Yang heaven also used corpse puppets. Jing asked, What are you looking at? Han Fei smiled and said, Nothing, I'm just curious about how to refine corpse puppets. Jing chuckled. Corpse puppets? Think about it when you become a king. Han Fei was not in a hurry to know the answer. What he really wanted to ask was why there were so many corpses in the Immortal Palace. What was the purpose? However, since it involved the Immortal Palace, he had to wait until he obtained the Yin-Yang Palace. Before this, everything was bullshit. Swish, swish. When Han Fei and Jing came out together, the venerable bat was slightly surprised. The red falcon's eyes widened. What's going on? The red falcon hurriedly folded its wings and said respectfully, Emissary Jing. The venerable bat also slightly lowered its head and saluted. This shocked Han Fei. Damn, didn't you say that there was only one maid? Why did the venerable bow to you? King glanced at Han Fei smugly, and then pretended to be profound. You don't have to worry about Han Fei. From now on, just treat him as a member of the Shuemu heaven and he can do whatever he wants. The venerable bat looked at Han Fei curiously and said lightly, Can I enter and exit the Immortal Palace? Jingter said, No, unless I bring him here. The red falcon looked at Han Fei a few more times, a little jealous. This kid can enter the Immortal Palace as soon as he arrives? How lucky did he get? After the venerable bat and the red falcon left, Jing handed Han Fei a square token, on which was engraved a bright red fruit in the shape of a water droplet. What kind of material was the token made of? As soon as Han Fei took it, he felt refreshed. If he was not mistaken, this thing seemed to be able to promote the cultivation of the divine soul. Jing said, There are only 73 venerable tokens in the entire Waterwood Fairy Palace. Their quality is comparable to sea-quelling bizarre treasures, and only kings can destroy them. Do you know about the sea-quelling bizarre treasure? Han Fei thought to himself, Not only do I know, but I also have more. Han Fei couldn't help but nod. I know. Ying smiled and said, That's good. This item can recognize its master. But after 3 years, he would need to take it back. It was better to wear it now. However, don't use it carelessly, and don't use the Venerable One's token as you please to order the creatures of the Waterwood Heaven. Got it. Only then did Jing urge, Let's go. Come with me to the human race. It seemed that after leaving the Immortal Palace, Jing was in a good mood. She took Han Fei to another teleportation array on a tree trunk. Only then did Han Fei realize that there were many teleportation arrays here. At a glance, there were more than 100 teleportation arrays. Seeing his expression, Jing said, What's there to be surprised about? The Cloud Sea God tree was huge, so it was more convenient to use the teleportation array. Forget it, I'll tell you. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1173. On the way to the human race, Jing briefly told Han Fei about the layout of the Waterwood Heaven. It turned out that there were also 4 battlefields in the Waterwood Heaven, namely the Realm of Ice, the Sea of Flames, the Dark Warport, and the Whole Sea. Among them, ordinary people would usually train and hunt in the Realm of Ice and the Whole Sea. The Sea of Flames and the Dark War Port were the most dangerous places in the Waterwood Heaven. It was said that there were battles with sea demons all year round. In the Sea of Flames, there was a wall of flames, which was a barrier to divide the battlefield. In the Dark War Port, there was a place called the Fearless Barrier, which was said to be guarded by many strong masters. Han Fei was not very curious about these things. He was here to seek a breakthrough. There was no need to run to other people's battlefields to make trouble. It was better to find a place to make a breakthrough quietly. That was the right way. Swish. When the teleportation array flashed, Han Fei landed directly on an extremely thick tree trunk. In the distance, the trees were dense, and the sunlight couldn't fully shine in, so it looked a little gloomy. As far as Han Fei could see, there seemed to be all kinds of strange-shaped treehouses in the distance, in addition to the relatively open area where he was now. Some houses were hung on the tree trunks by vines. Some treehouses were even built on leaves. There were only a few people he could see. As soon as Han Fei and Jing appeared, someone immediately scanned them. This? Envoy Jing? Swish. With a whoosh, someone appeared on the tree trunk plaza. The man said in surprise, "Envoy Jing, why are you here?" As he spoke, the man's pupils suddenly constricted, and he stared at Han Fei blankly. The first thing he noticed was Han Fei's face, and then he was stunned by the venerable token hanging on Han Fei's waist. This? Human race? He raised her head and said, "Lu Lihan? Where are Wushang Shui and Yu Chen?" The handsome Lu Lihan quickly came back to his senses. Oh, Venerable Snow and Master Yu Chen went to inspect the human race. Should I call them back? Jing nodded. Call them back. By the way, inform all the peak-level explorers to come. Lu Lihan was startled. She looked at Han Fei again and thought to herself, what's going on? Lu Lihan's voice was slightly heavy. Envoy Jing, please wait a moment. After Lu Lihan left, Han Fei asked in surprise, are all the people here so handsome? Jinger tilted her head and looked at Han Fei. Am I handsome? Anyway, this is the first time I've seen someone as ugly as you. Han Fei really wanted to slap himself. Why did he mention this? Wasn't this asking for a blow? Jing giggled. Alright, I won't tease you. The people of the Waterwood Heaven should be living on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree all year round, so it's normal for the humans here to be different from the humans on your side. Once you become an explorer, it would be very easy to make yourself more handsome. You should be able to do it now, right? Han Fei mumbled, I think I'm pretty good right now. Pooh. Where does your confidence come from? Han Fei rolled his eyes, feeling that chatting with Jinger was not stressful at all. However, chatting with the Life Queen was too stressful. However, he heard Jinger say, oh right, when you get back, you should familiarize yourself with the Cloud Sea Divine Tree for a few days. When you need to transcend the tribulation, you just need to call me through the Venerable Token. Because this is my Venerable Token. Han Fei staggered. He is a venerable? Han Fei didn't feel good again. She looks like a little girl, but she's actually a venerable? Are you going to give me a hard time? Han Fei tried to keep his face calm. But if I transcend the tribulation here, do I have to leave the Cloud Sea Divine Tree? Jing nodded. Of course, who dares to transcend the tribulation on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree? Do you want to die? You're not familiar with the outer waters of the Waterwood Heaven, so other people won't protect you. After you get to know this place, you can choose where to transcend the tribulation. Swish, swish. While the two of them were talking, they saw a beautiful and cold beauty suddenly appear in front of them. Following that, shwa shwa shwa, handsome men and beautiful women appeared one after another. Some took teleportation arrays, and some directly tore the void. At a glance, those faces. Oh my god, Han Fei felt a little uncomfortable. Jing smiled slightly. Shue, I brought you a person. The great beauty who appeared first looked like an elf in a movie. She had fair skin, shoulder-length short hair, aqua blue eyes, and normal ears. This made Han Fei realize that the coldness of beautiful women could usually be combined with valiance. Her posture was not worse than Shimin Linglan's, and her appearance was even better than Shimin Linglan's. Han Fei murmured to himself, this must be the Wushang Shui that Jing mentioned, also the human Venerable Snow. Looking at the others, some of them didn't conceal their auras, which was definitely the standard of peak-level explorers. However, there were only 10 people here. 1 Venerable and 9 peak-level explorers didn't seem to be a lot. After all, there were 72 Venerables in the Waterwood Heaven. Logically speaking, there should be more than 1 human Venerable. Sure enough, Wushang Shui said, Jing, what do you mean? If there's anything, you only come to me. Everyone else is dead, right? Han Fei seemed a little impatient when he heard this. It seemed that Jing brought him here on purpose. Jing jumped to Wushang Shui's side, hugged her arm and said, Oh, I'm the closest to you. Oh, his name is Han Fei, from the Yin-Yang Heaven. In the future, he will stay in the Waterwood Heaven for 3 years, so I directly brought him here. Needless to say, Wushang Shui and the others had already been looking at Han Fei. Wushang Shui was surprised. The Yin-Yang Heaven? Is that road open? Jing said coquettishly, No, he's special, so I came here. Wushang Shui looked at Han Fei in confusion. A peak-level law enforcer? Why did you give him your venerable token? Jing said, The queen asked me to give it to him. Wushang Shui's eyes narrowed. You mean, this person has been to the Divine Palace? Yes, yes. Han Fei slightly cupped his hands. Greetings, Venerable Snow and everyone else. Someone wondered, Emissary Jing, this person came here from the Yin-Yang Heaven just to stay here for 3 years? Jing said casually, Han Fei is here to transcend the tribulation and familiarize himself with the camp of the Waterwood Heaven in advance. He will come to help in the future. What? A peak-level law enforcer? The group of people frowned as if they didn't think highly of Han Fei's strength at all. Wushang Shui said lightly, What do you need me to do? Take him with me? Jing shook her head. No, Han Fei can go anywhere in the Waterwood Heaven. Just arrange someone to teach him about the Waterwood Heaven. Han Fei was a little embarrassed. These people didn't seem to take him seriously. How could they underestimate him? Damn it, I'm just not as good-looking as you. Do they have to? Wushang Shui narrowed his eyes and said, Oh, he can go anywhere? Is he very strong? Jing looked at Han Fei. He should be very strong. Wushang Shui glanced at a handsome young man next to him. Yu Chen, suppress your strength to the level of a peak-level law enforcer and fight with him. Hearing this, Jing immediately exclaimed and said, That's not good, is it? Yu Chen is about to become a venerable. Wushang Shui said lightly, It's okay. He must be extraordinary to be treated so well by the queen. If he can't even compare to Yu Chen, how can he help the Waterwood Heaven? The handsome man said with a smile, How do you want to fight? Fight here or go to the Great Illusionary Land? Wushang Shui glanced at Han Fei. The Great Illusionary Land. Seeing that Han Fei was dumbfounded, Jing immediately said, The Great Illusionary Land is also known as the Dream Trial Field. It's a special ability of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. You just need to press a Cloud Sea leaf and sink your mind into it, and you will appear in the Great Illusionary Land. Han Fei grinned slightly. Well, can I say something? Everyone looked at Han Fei, thinking, What else do you need to say? Could it be that he was afraid? Han Fei smiled and said lightly, You may not be able to beat me at the level of a peak-level law enforcer. You'd better suppress your strength to the level of an explorer, preferably an intermediate one. Han Fei was just stating a fact. These people had no idea how strong he was now. After 4 years of accumulation, his perception range had reached more than 1,200 kilometers, and his strength had grown from 54 waves to 76 waves, an increase of more than 20 waves. Sure enough, everyone had different reactions. They were all very shocked. What? A woman said with an ugly expression, You're Han Fei, right? You have to know that you're facing a powerhouse who is about to become a venerable. It's okay for young people to be a little arrogant. We know you have some talent, but don't be too arrogant. Wushang Shui glanced at that person, and the latter shut up. Wushang Shui looked at Han Fei and said seriously, Everything in the great illusionary land is real. Even your body will feel real. If you're really seriously injured, your soul will also be shaken. You just need to be sure. Han Fei sneered in his heart. In a sense, I represent the future king of the Yin-Yang heaven. It's not an exaggeration to say that I'm the strongest in the Yin-Yang heaven. How can I lower the prestige of the Yin-Yang heaven at this moment? Han Fei smiled slightly. No, I'm used to fighting like this. Liu Chen, however, smiled and said in a very gentle voice, okay, in that case, let's fight like this. Ting blinked her eyes, quite curious. A guy who can win the queen's favor must have some ability. There were many people in the great illusionary land. If Han Fei could face Liu Chen without being defeated, it would be enough to shock the major clans of the Waterwood Heaven. Wushang Shui glanced at the leaves in the sea of clouds and said, choose a random leaf and sit on it. I'll wait for you in the great illusionary land. Swish, swish. Almost with a swish, these people disappeared in front of him and each sat on a leaf. Han Fei grinned. This is a fight. I'm not a coward. Then Han Fei appeared on a leaf, sank his mind, and scanned the leaf with his soul. All of a sudden, an extremely mysterious feeling appeared. When he reappeared, he found himself standing on an incomparably large square. But looking around, he could still see the huge branches. He was still on the tree. It's a bit amazing. Am I in the soul of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree? Not far away, in addition to Wushang Shui and Jing, there were creatures of other races. A few big blue birds, some spider monsters, and a few large-horned beetles were looking at this side curiously. Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1174. Because he had been to the ideal palace before, he was not surprised by this kind of illusion, but he was very skeptical about the absolute safety of this place. Han Fei couldn't help but look at Jing. If my soul is destroyed here, will there be any danger in reality? Wu Shangxue was a little surprised. Are you talking about soul skills? Han Fei slightly nodded. Whether it was the void lines or the 100 beasts' soul-suppressing howl, they were not weak. They were both powerful killing weapons that could strangle one's divine soul. What if they really used it in the heat of battle? Who would be the one to blame in the end? Jing said, don't worry, I'll tell the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. You can fight without worry. However, he saw that Jing had her eyes closed, as if she was communicating with something. After a full 10 breaths, she finally opened her eyes. All right, if necessary, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree will act. So, you don't have to worry about any accidents. Han Fei thought to himself, it seems that it's not so safe in this grand illusionary land. Once their souls were destroyed, even if they weren't directly killed, they would definitely suffer extremely heavy injuries. Liu Chen still had a smile on his face, but he no longer underestimated him. Since the other party said so, it meant that Han Fei had a soul attack method. A soul attack technique that even the great illusionary land could not withstand was naturally not to be underestimated. Not far away, the beetles that were colliding with each other couldn't help but exclaim, is this static messenger? Why is revered snow here? Chirp. Come quickly, there's a big battle here. Suddenly Jing shouted from afar, no one is allowed to come within 10 li of this place. Jing's shout attracted some of the living beings of the various races in the great illusionary land. Liu Chen flipped his hand and a longbow appeared in his hand. It was very different from the common longbows. It seemed like the longbows of Shuemu Sky were more unique. This longbow was designed to be shaped like a blade, and there were blades on both sides. Han Fei keenly sensed that the longbow seemed to be joined. If nothing went wrong, the longbow could actually be split apart, forming 2 blades. Interesting. Liu Chen smiled faintly. The Shuemu heavenly human race has many manipulators, and their battle bow techniques have evolved to the extreme. Therefore, many people were both manipulators and soul warriors. It just so happens that I'm very strong in both elements. Han Fei thought for a moment. Since the man had told him his occupation, he should say something. Han Fei stepped forward and formed an array with each step. The 6-spirit armor and the coiled turtle array were the simplest, and Han Fei also created a tidal array. At that moment, huge waves rose behind him. His voice was leisurely. Due to the geographical conditions, I am a spirit gatherer and a soul warrior. However, I have learned a lot of things. It involves formations, sabers, staffs, and sword seals. I am proficient in a few of them. Because I walked the path of body refinement, my fist technique is even stronger. Next door, Jing, who was watching the battle, couldn't help but clap her hands. Wow, Shui, look, I said that this kid has some ability, right? Wushang Shui frowned slightly. Don't you think it's too complicated? Someone shook his head. His foundation seems very young. It's hard for him to master so many spells at the same time, isn't it? In the distance, a group of birds, insects, and humans surrounded them. Some young people looked and immediately exclaimed, "Isn't that Lord Yuchen? Who was the one sparring with Lord Yuchen? He's so ugly." A big spider was stunned. Why is that human only a peak-level law enforcer? Why didn't Lord Yuchen suppress his realm? A big snake said, "He suppressed his realm. He's an intermediate explorer." Challenging Lord Yuchen? Is this guy kidding me? A girl flew over with a bow. The person on the other side doesn't look weak. Look, there seem to be countless blades flying in the tide. Han Fei activated Devil Change and stretched out the phantom glass wings. He didn't plan to fuse with Little Black and Little White. If the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes appeared, it would be too weird. Besides, he still planned to keep some trump cards. After all, he was in someone else's territory. If he were to reveal all of his trump cards, wouldn't that make him seem too shallow? Wushang Shui shouted in a low voice, "Yu Chen, if you lose, go to the fearless barrier and kill a big demon at the peak-level Dao-seeking state before coming back." Hearing this, Yu Chen immediately shouted, "Han Fei, go all out." Han Fei's eyes narrowed. Of course. Swish. In the field, the two disappeared almost at the same time. In the void, an arrow shadow traversed, with red wings spread, like a big bird of fire. On Han Fei's side, in the tide, thousands of knives flowed. In an instant, the arrows broke out of the water, and the sky was filled with knife light. In just an instant, the knives and arrows collided, and the torrent of knives was pierced in half by the arrows. And the arrow that looked like a big bird was also shattered by the torrent of knives. Clank, clank, clank. In the void, the two figures appeared in many places. Swish. He activated the draw technique, and the knife light tore the void within a kilometer. At the same time, a terrifying stinger pierced through like a sharp arrow. On the other side, a massive number of vines rose. Yu Chen nimbly shuttled through the vines, stretched out his longbow, and in the blink of an eye, more than 30 arrows, one after another, smashed the void and bombarded the draw technique. Clang, clang, clang. Gotcha! The 10,000-year demon stinger was cut off by Yu Chen with a backhand slash. Swish. Swish. This battle lasted only 2 minutes. At this moment, the two stepped into the void, each standing on one side. Jingmer's eyes glowed. Wow, he's quite powerful, isn't he? Han Fei's knife skills are very powerful, and Yu Chen's arrows are faster than before. Wu Shangxue nodded slightly. He's very strong. He's a peak-level law enforcer fighting an intermediate explorer. He's definitely a peak-level heavenly talent. Next to Wu Shangxue, the other peak-level explorers looked serious. He's indeed very strong. Although it was just a tentative battle, Han Fei didn't lose the upper hand. This made them have to be cautious. The creatures of various races watching the battle not far away kept exclaiming at this moment. Wow, it's too fast. I can't see it at all. A beetle's eyes kept rolling. Who's better? Someone responded, no one is better. They're neck and neck. The young man was shocked. Who the hell is he? Yu Chen, a peak-level law enforcer, can fight an intermediate explorer. If there is such a person in the Shuemu heaven, how can I not know him? More and more people were around. Yu Chen smiled. No need to test me. Come on. Han Fei nodded slightly. Just now, he only used 50% of his strength. And Iyuchen only used the power of a beginner intermediate explorer. If he attacked with all his strength, he could kill the opponent in an instant. 17 arrows of Dao Seeking. Iyuchen directly entered the spirit plant, and no one knew where he went. Han Fei couldn't use the yin-yang divine eyes, so he could only see the shadows of people on the vines through the eyes of true vision. Suddenly, he saw a giant fiery serpent swooping over like a dragon. A lock-on technique? Han Fei froze, stood proudly in the void, and pointed his finger. 10,000 knives in one. The snowflake-like knife light gathered into a knife, which slashed through the void and caused the void to tremble. Bam! The giant fiery serpent was torn apart in an instant. But in the next second, 16 fiery serpents pounced out in a row. And each wave was more powerful than the last. Bam! 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 Someone sighed. Although this person is very strong, it's impossible for him to block them. Master Iyuchen's last 3 arrows are still enchanted. Wu Shangxue and the others were expressionless and just watched the battle very carefully. Han Fei grinned. What a strong archery technique. I'm surprised. Han Fei roared and the invincible will appeared. In the golden giant shadow, Han Fei raised his fist, and a humming array light appeared on his hand. Sacrificing, fist mark, cut. The 10,000 knives in one collapsed on the 5th arrow. At this moment, the void trembled, and a terrifying force broke out from Han Fei. Boom! A fist mark rumbled and the blood-red light shone brightly. A fist mark rushed all the way like a savage behemoth. Who cared about the arrow shadows? They collapsed directly. Bam! 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 9 fiery serpents were punched through in a row. They couldn't resist Han Fei's terrifying blow at all. This scene made everyone's divine soul suffocate. What a powerful fist seal! Someone exclaimed, so strong, this ugly man is so strong. A big insect shrank. This fist can easily punch through my carapace. Even Wu Shangxue was surprised. This kind of extremely domineering fist mark, ordinary people can't withstand it at all. I'm afraid this guy's physique has already reached a terrifying level. Jing Er's eyes widened. Although she was a venerable, she had been staying in the immortal palace. She didn't even have a chance to fight, so she liked to watch this kind of drama. However, Wu Shangxue said, but it's still a little short. On the battlefield, the last 3 arrows rolled up 1,000 feet of flames, and the giant serpents roared, making many people shrink their heads. Han Fei clearly felt that when the last 3 arrows appeared, the sacrificing fist mark couldn't withstand it anymore. Oh! With a dragon roar, the 9 mansions dragon seal broke out, and Han Fei smashed it out. Bam! The arrow shadow containing Taoist sense collapsed, but the next arrow shadow burst out. That terrifying blow, together with the sacrificing fist mark and the 9 dragon seal, collapsed at the same time. Swish! Before Han Fei could react, the last arrow had already burst out. At this time, void distortion was useless, and the locking skill wouldn't stop shooting at him just because he ran away. Demon suppressing diamond. At that moment, another golden man rose from the ground. In the exclamations of countless people, Han Fei directly caught this arrow with both hands. Together with the arrow, he was blasted more than 300 feet away by the arrow. The roaring explosion shook in the billowing flames. Wow! That person, how dare he catch the arrow with his bare hands? Is he crazy or am I crazy? Isn't he sure to lose? What a fierce person. He's too fierce. However, at the moment when Han Fei caught the arrow with his bare hands, Jing Er, Wu Shangxue, and other strong masters were all shocked. Others didn't know, but they saw it clearly at that moment. The golden giant blocked the Taoist sense with one palm. Han Fei's body was shining with golden light, and he held the arrow with his bare hands, which was extremely domineering. At that moment, countless sharp vines like chains stabbed at Han Fei in the flames. Han Fei smiled. It seems that I underestimated the enemy. However, this is also good. It makes me realize that peak-level law enforcers have limits. In the waves of fire, Han Fei's voice sounded leisurely. Yu Chen's pupils constricted, and he immediately shouted, "Arrow of Destiny." A massive number of vines gathered, and the big bough floated in the air. There was a big hand in the void holding the arrow, and endless energy poured into the arrow. Someone shouted, "Hurry up and retreat. Your life is on the line." This is the arrow extinguishing technique. Just as these people were exclaiming in shock, they heard a furious roar. In the flames, a huge figure more than 50 meters tall suddenly appeared. When everyone saw it clearly, they were all stunned. What kind of creature is this? I know that many people are going to say that I'm in the wrong chapter again. TSK, let me reply weakly. Rome wasn't built in a day, so I have to take it slow. End of this chapter. Chapter 1175. Before the battle, Han Fei had never thought that he would use the Beast King art. This wasn't a quick battle, so Han Fei didn't need to be extremely powerful at the beginning. He didn't even want to show too much of his strength and wanted to preserve it. However, when Yu Chen's terrifying arrow was pulled, Han Fei knew that he had underestimated his opponent. How could a powerhouse who was expected to become a venerable be so simple? Besides, the other party only suppressed his strength to that of an intermediate explorer, and he was still a peak-level explorer. At this moment, as soon as the Beast King art was activated, Han Fei's strength soared. In the Immortal Palace, the Life Queen, who was feeding a spiritual fruit, was slightly taken aback and asked in confusion, "The Beast King art?" On the battlefield, everyone was dumbfounded by Han Fei's transformation. Neither jumped and exclaimed, "This is the ancient beast race. The beast race ape?" Wu Shangxue was also stunned. The beast race? The one that has disappeared in the long river of history? Jing nodded repeatedly. Yes. Could it be that there are still beasts in the Yin-Yang heaven? However, while they were talking, Han Fei stretched out his hand and the embroidery needle appeared. Han Fei held the rod with both hands and raised it to the sky. "Oh!" With an extremely domineering roar, Yu Chen grunted and vomited a mouthful of blood. Immediately afterward, everyone saw the phantoms of hundreds of beasts galloping and roaring in the air. Swish! A huge firebird with 3 gorgeous long feathers swept across the sky. Bam! 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 The Monkey King 3,000 strikes erupted. At that moment, cracks appeared in the void, followed by shattering. In an instant, hundreds of terrifying attacks were launched. That was called ferocious. Before the 100 cudgels had even arrived, the Fire Phoenix had already collapsed. The remaining half of the arrows were shot at Han Fei because they were too fast. However, the giant ape's big hand clenched and crushed them. Such a terrifying attack didn't even break the skin of Han Fei's ape form. The hundreds of beasts roared, and Yu Chen vomited several mouthfuls of blood, losing half of his strength. "Oh!" He opened his big mouth full of sharp teeth, and all the surrounding energy, including the raging flames, was swallowed by him. The horror of the body of war was revealed. The Monkey King's 3,000 strikes continued, shattering the vines that were blocking the way. At that moment, Wu Shangxue shouted, "Yu Chen, advanced explorer." He seized the air with his fingers, and without the longbow, he shot out 5 sharp arrows. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the 5 arrows shattered. However, this also bought Yu Chen some time, allowing him to fire another chain of arrows. Swish, swish, swish. Bang, bang, bang. Han Fei grinned disdainfully. Competing in endurance with the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes? What are you thinking about? 3,000 layered waves? Was he joking with you? Sure enough, after more than 200 arrows, Yu Chen found that even though he was an advanced explorer, he couldn't resist Han Fei's continuous attacks. During the battle, all the energy around him would be plundered by Han Fei. Buzz! Yu Chen disappeared from where he was. 7 or 8 vines split open, and 7 or 8 Yu Chen appeared. Han Fei held the embroidery needle with one hand. Grow, grow, grow. The 100-beast soul-suppressing roar erupted again. The embroidery needle swept out, and all the vines exploded. Not a single one of them was a match for it. Because the battle was too shocking, countless people cast their eyes over. Many people had never seen such an explosive battle before. They had never expected that a person's physique could be so strong, and they had never seen such a terrifying creature like the prehistoric giant ape. Therefore, their blood was boiling as they watched the battle. Wushang Shui shouted, "Okay, that's enough. Yu Chen is defeated." Hearing this, Han Fei immediately swung the big rod and carried it on his shoulder. His eyes were cold and terrifying. Yu Chen walked out of a demonic vine and curled the corner of his mouth. "What kind of monster am I fighting with?" Han Fei put the incomparably thick embroidery needle vertically on the ground, and his body quickly shrank, turning from an ape to a human. In the end, he twisted his neck, full of fighting spirit. Wushang Shui was speechless. She couldn't help but look at Jinger, who was still excited, tugged at her clothes, and said, "Don't be silly. Who is this guy?" Jinger hadn't come back to her senses yet and replied casually, He should be a king candidate from the Yin-Yang heaven." Pooh. Yu Chen, who had just left the battle, vomited blood. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? A king candidate? You fucking asked me to suppress my realm to fight him? I was almost fucked senseless." Wushang Shui looked at the heartless Jinger speechlessly and covered his head with one hand. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Under countless shocked gazes, Han Fei put his hand on the pillar-like embroidery needle, and the latter swooshed and sank into Han Fei's body. Wushang Shui patted Jinger's head. "He still has a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Why didn't you tell me?" Jinger was taken aback. I didn't know." Wushang Shui. With a big smile on his face, Han Fei cupped his hands. "Thank you." Yu Chen didn't feel good. "Forget it. You just want me to go to the fearless barrier and kill a peak-level Dao-seeking big demon. I'll go." In the distance, exclamations were heard. "Wow. This guy actually won. So cool. What was that creature just now? It's so scary. His mouth is so big, like the sharp teeth of a dragon. His muscles are all over the place. He's ugly but adorably cute." Han Fei staggered. "What's so ugly and cute about it? Isn't he ferocious?" Wushang Shui glanced around, thought for a moment, and said casually, "This boy's name is Han Fei, and he comes from the Yin-Yang heaven. In the future, he will stay in our Shuemu heaven for 3 years. Just know him." "But can people from the Yin-Yang heaven come over? Wow. He's from the Yin-Yang heaven?" A big beetle shook its head. "The Yin-Yang heaven, the legendary Yin-Yang heaven." A big bird asked curiously, "Are there many beasts in the Yin-Yang heaven?" A human being asked curiously, "Han Fei, what is the Yin-Yang heaven like?" Jinga finally came back to herself and said to the group of people, "Don't ask questions. You'll know in the future. Fei, let's go." Han Fei glanced at Jinga. "How do we go out?" Jinger said, "Just communicate with the grand illusionary land with your mind." After a moment, when Han Fei opened his eyes, he looked at the big leaf under him in surprise, thinking, "This cloud sea divine tree is really amazing. It can even create a place comparable to the ideal palace." Suddenly Jinger shouted, "Han Fei, why are you still sitting there? Come down." Han Fei looked around and found that everyone was already waiting for him. So, he flashed and appeared in front of everyone. However, at this moment, the way those peak-level explorers looked at Han Fei had already changed. It was the first time they had seen a peak-level law enforcer fighting an advanced explorer. However, thinking that Han Fei was a candidate for the king, they were finally relieved. If everyone in the Yin-Yang heaven was like this, then the Yin-Yang heaven would be too terrifying. Wushang Shui looked at Han Fei again with a complicated expression. "Okay, you are indeed a candidate for the king. Come back to the city with me. I'll ask someone to tell you about the current situation of the Shuemu heaven." Jinger still wanted to follow him, when Wushang Shui suddenly said, "Aren't you going back to the divine palace?" Jinger was stunned for a moment. "I'm going to stay for dinner before going back. I want to eat fish cakes." Jinger thought to herself, "It's not easy for me to come out. Do you think it's easy for me? Human cooking is delicious. I'm drooling just thinking about it." Han Fei said in surprise, "Huh? Do people eat here too?" Wushang Shui was stunned. "Don't people in the Yin-Yang heaven need to eat?" Han Fei immediately had an idea. No, of course they need to eat. In fact, what I want to say is that compared with my strength, I still have one thing that is the strongest. It can be said to be the strongest in the yin-yang heaven. Suddenly, the corners of their mouths twitched. Are the people of the yin-yang heaven all so shameless? I know you are very strong, okay? What else do you want to show off for? Jing'er asked curiously, do you have any special abilities? Han Fei held his head high and said proudly, my cooking skills are unparalleled in the world. I won't cook for ordinary people, but I have to do it today. Jing'er immediately widened her eyes. Really? Is it more delicious than the fish cakes of human beings? The Life Queen, who was in the Divine Palace, sighed gloomily. Why did she find such a stupid maid? She's so stupid. She has never eaten fish cakes. How can she compete with her? Among the peak-level explorers, a short explorer was immediately dissatisfied. That's impossible. Our fish cakes are unparalleled in the world, and all races like to eat them. Especially those shameless golden turtles, who come here to eat and drink whenever they have nothing to do. Han Fei grinned. That's not necessarily true. As he spoke, Han Fei took out a box of potato chips, as if by magic, and took a bite. To tell you the truth, I have already comprehended the great path of cooking. Jing'er quickly reached out and grabbed a piece, saying with some disgust, it's just a little bit. I'm not full. After that, she also took a bite of it with a smack sound. Suddenly, Wu Shangxue and the others found that Jing'er was stunned on the spot. Wu Shangxue said with a black face, do you have to do this? Wu Shangxue glanced at the box in Han Fei's hand, pinched a piece suspiciously, and took a bite. Under the gaze of a group of peak-level explorers, Wu Shangxue glanced at them, stuffed the potato chips into his mouth, and said softly, let's go. Let's go back to the city. Yu Chen hadn't left yet. He looked at Jing'er and then at Wu Shangxue, thinking, is it very delicious? At their level, they would no longer be tempted by external things. However, it was perfectly normal for them to have a sumptuous meal. Yu Chen was about to pinch a piece, only to see that the box was gone. At some point, Jing'er had already held the box in her hand. Han Fei, look, I've led the way for you. This is mine. By the way, let's go back to the city. My time is limited. I have to go back after the meal. Han Fei, Yu Chen and the others. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1176. It turned out that there was also a city on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. However, this city was completely different from the kind of cities that Han Fei was familiar with. Rather than calling it a city, it would be better to call it a primitive tribal settlement. Even a venerable like Wu Shangxue had only built a courtyard on one of the tree branches. He did not even set up a formation. However, no one would be stupid enough to use their perception to see what the venerable's house looked like. Otherwise, if they were not careful, they would face the risk of being slapped to death. Wu Shangxue led a group of people directly to his courtyard. Along the way, they all took teleportation arrays. Han Fei's only feeling was that it was really troublesome to walk on this Cloud Sea Divine Tree. There were teleportation arrays everywhere. If they were not careful, they would easily go the wrong way. If they went the wrong way and didn't know they had gone the wrong way, they might directly face the risk of getting lost. In the Venerable's courtyard, there was a row of barbecue grills and a large pot cooking. The tempting aroma made the group of people swallow involuntarily. Jing'er was holding a garlic prawn in her hand and eating it. Then she looked at Han Fei curiously. Why are the ingredients you used so low level but so delicious? Han Fei said with a smile, everything in the world has its own uniqueness. As long as we see the essence through the phenomenon, we can discover what things look like behind them. Wu Shangxue's eyelids moved slightly. Holding a roasted clam in his hand, he was a little surprised to hear Han Fei bragging. These words seemed to make sense. Someone said, Han Fei, what kind of pot is this? Is it ready? Han Fei said, please wait a moment. There are still some ingredients that haven't been added. Wu Shangxue was speechless. It's just a meal. You've already added more than 20 kinds of ingredients. Han Fei smiled. It's like practicing combat skills. There are many technical considerations. The same is true for cooking. Depending on the time, the intensity of the fire, the amount of ingredients, and the amount of water, the taste will be different. Jinger nodded quickly and quietly grabbed a skewer of grilled squid from the barbecue grill. After a moment, when the hot pot was ready, the soaring aroma began to spread in all directions. However, with a thought from Wu Shangxue, the entire courtyard was closed. This rich aroma could not be emitted at all. For the first time, Han Fei discovered that a venerable could be like this. It was just a hot pot and barbecue. Jing ate without caring about her image. Han Fei thought to himself, isn't the venerable going to enter the Tao? Would a person who could enter the Tao be so naive and naive? On the other hand, Wu Shangxue and the group of peak-level explorers also praised him, but they only praised him once from the beginning to the end. Then, although the hot pot was delicious, he ate it in small bites. Han Fei chuckled in his heart. It seemed simple, but it was extremely practical. In a sense, the more exquisite his skills were, the more the other party would think that he had put in a lot of effort. To put it bluntly, it should be easy to exchange a meal for a combat skill here. However, Han Fei didn't lack combat skills. Since he had just arrived, all he had to do was feed them. He fed them so crazily that they felt embarrassed. The more he ate, the better it would be for him. Halfway through the hot pot, Wu Shangxue suddenly stopped moving his chopsticks. In the end, it's just the desire for food. This Tao could easily hinder one's cultivation. Jing don't come here so often. But Jing, whose mouth was full of grease, suddenly widened her eyes and thought to herself, why does it hinder my cultivation? Wu Shangxue glanced at Han Fei and said, since your purpose here is to transcend the tribulation, don't wander around the city every day. Later, I'll ask someone to take you around and visit all the battlefields. Your strength has reached the peak of law enforcer, and it's only a matter of time before you make a breakthrough. Don't delay. Han Fei nodded slightly. It didn't matter whether he fed him or not. However, this venerable Snow's self-restraint was quite strong. When he ate hot pot for the first time, he managed to hold back. When he was in the Scattered Stars prison, even old Han couldn't hold back and asked him to cook every day. Jing suddenly said, why don't I introduce you to him? Wu Shangxue glared at Jing. Don't even think about it. Her Majesty will catch you. Jing snorted and then secretly said to Han Fei, remember to make more noise. I'll help you. Han Fei was speechless. You'll help me? You're just here to eat, aren't you? However, the feeding effect is not bad. Jing was a venerable after all. If he could have the help of a venerable, the trip to the Shuemu heaven would be smooth and there shouldn't be any big problems. After the meal, Jing still wanted to have some more barbecue. However, suddenly, a pink flower bloomed in front of her. When he saw this flower, Wu Shangxue looked as if he was trying to hold back his laughter. Jing bowed to Little Blossom aggrievedly. Your Majesty, I'm going back now. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Did the Life Queen come to ask for her in person? Han Fei wondered if he should bribe the Life Queen when he had time in the future. He had to get some high-level ingredients. The combat level of the Shuemu heaven was higher than that of the Yin-Yang heaven. There should be no shortage of legendary creatures. Before Jing left, she glanced at Han Fei. Remember to call me when you transcend the tribulation. Han Fei smiled faintly. Sure. As soon as Jing left, Wu Shangxue immediately said, disperse. Yuchen, find someone to show Han Fei around the Shuemu heaven, and then you go to the fearless barrier yourself. Yuchen smiled helplessly. Hey Han Fei, come with me. When the others left, only Han Fei and Yuchen were left. The latter smiled faintly. Han Fei, are there still beasts in the Yin-Yang heaven? Han Fei thought to himself, are you still thinking about this? He immediately said, it's hard to find beasts. I only obtained some inheritance in an ancient mystic realm. Yuchen hummed and suddenly changed the topic. Well, do you want to make your face a little prettier? Han Fei? Yuchen thought to himself, in terms of potential, I'm not as good as you, but you are too ugly. It's really embarrassing to stay here. Han Fei shook his head. Actually, I am very handsome in the Yin-Yang heaven. Yu Chen's body stiffened and he smiled awkwardly. Really? That's really unexpected. After only a few steps, Yu Chen suddenly shouted in a low voice, "Young man, come here." Yu Chen was a semi-venerable, so he certainly wouldn't go to a crowded town for no reason. He just scanned with his perception and found that there were only a few heavenly talents in the city at this moment who hadn't entered the state of cultivation. So he called the strongest one over. Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei saw a vigorous woman in a fashionable green battle suit shuttling between the branches. Beside her, there was a longbow in the shape of an eagle's wing, drawing beautiful arcs in the air. Why else would it be said that women were the most admirable creatures? That flexible body, perfect curves, if coupled with a good-looking face, it would really be worth appreciating. However, Han Fei, who had seen too many beautiful women, was not interested in this at all. He looked calm. Compared with the Life Queen, Jing, and Wushang Shui, this girl seemed a little immature. This girl had a delicate face. She clearly had some baby fat, but she kept a straight face, as if she wanted to make herself look colder. However, her cute appearance couldn't support her cold temperament at all. When the woman landed in front of Han Fei and Yu Chen, she first bowed. "Greetings, Your Excellency." Then, the woman frowned and looked at Han Fei as if thinking, why does this person look like this? Has he never received the Life Queen's favor? However, she was immediately shocked. She stared at the token on Han Fei's waist and took a deep breath. "Messenger Jing's venerable token?" Yu Chen said lightly, "This is Han Fei, a distinguished guest from the Yin-Yang heaven. It can be said that he is the strongest heavenly talent of the same generation in the Yin-Yang heaven. I'm no match for him in the same realm or even higher realm. From now on, Han Fei will stay in the Shuemu heaven for 3 years and live in our flying feather tribe. Han Fei is here for the tribulation. Before that, you will follow him and introduce the terrain and battle situation of the Shuemu heaven. Show him around. The strongest heavenly talent of the Yin-Yang heaven?" The woman took a deep breath. "An existence that even Your Excellency admitted was no match for? Is he really so strong?" "Yes, Your Excellency." Yu Chen patted Han Fei on the shoulder. "Shu Xiaoman is a heavenly talent of our flying feather tribe and is very familiar with the battlefield. She will tell you the rest. Thanks to you, I have to go to the fearless barrier. I hope you haven't left when I come back." Shu Xiaoman said in surprise, "The fearless barrier?" Yu Chen smiled faintly. "If you lose a fight, you have to be punished." Shu Xiaoman couldn't help but look at the smiling Han Fei. Is this person really so strong? Han Fei grinned. "Maybe we will meet again." Yu Chen nodded slightly, tore open a void crack with a finger, and stepped in, leaving Shu Xiaoman and Han Fei in place. Han Fei smiled slightly. Shu Xiaoman narrowed her eyes. "Did you really beat me?" The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. "I used a secret method." Shu Xiaoman let out a long sigh of relief, but her eyes were a little provocative. "Guest, can I have a match with you?" Han Fei was a little surprised. This girl was obviously not convinced. Han Fei shrugged. Shu Xiaoman said, "Go to the great illusionary land. In the Shuemu heaven, no matter what happens, even if there is a conflict, it will be resolved in the great illusionary land. Fierce fighting is not allowed on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, which is easy to damage the leaves of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree." Han Fei said, "If it's just a match, it should be very fast." Shu Xiaoman said, "You can't damage the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, not even the leaves." Han Fei chuckled. "But if there is any damage, I lose." Shu Xiaoman's eyes were immediately filled with anger. Wasn't this person a little too arrogant? Although you got the venerable token, you are only a peak-level law enforcer. I am also a peak-level law enforcer. Why should I be convinced? Do I have to follow you just because you say so? What if I have to follow you for 3 years? Shu Xiaoman was immediately a little angry. You said that. Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1177. Shu Xiaoman was extremely unhappy with Han Fei's contempt. She turned over and jumped away. In midair, the arrow turned into a rain of arrows, and there were hundreds of streams of light. Han Fei curled up the corners of his mouth. When fighting Yu Chen, he used a lock-on technique to target the enemy. It was meaningless to rely on speed, but it was different from yours. Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei turned into a phantom and picked up the arrows with his bare hands. In an instant, all the arrows were shattered. At the moment of the explosion, the energy was swallowed by Han Fei before it could dissipate. Han Fei disappeared on the spot and appeared beside Shu Xiaoman before she could react. I'm not strong enough to attack separately. Shu Xiaoman was shocked. She turned over and a circle of blade-like algae leaves appeared to protect her body. However, the next moment she was dumbfounded. Han Fei twisted his body and appeared in the algae leaf storm, standing next to her. And to prevent her from destroying the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, a defensive array appeared at some point. Her own blow couldn't break the array in a short time. Shu Xiaoman wanted to use other combat skills, but she heard a snap of fingers. In the void, countless chains appeared. In an instant, her range of action was blocked. It was too late. Shu Xiaoman wanted to use the death substitution technique to get herself out. However, as soon as she moved away, a circle of void chains wrapped her again. This time, they directly locked her, no longer giving her a chance to resist. To Shu Xiaoman's shock, Han Fei took back the void chains and smiled faintly. Thank you, Shu Xiaoman. It was the first time that Shu Xiaoman had seen this kind of combat style. Catching arrows with bare hands, swallowing energy, instantly condensing an array, twisting space, and moving so fast that people couldn't react at all. How could there be such a person in this world? Shu Xiaoman thought that although she was not the strongest among her peers, she was not weak. But if she could exert her full strength, she was not weak. She could even be said to be very strong. However, when facing Han Fei, she was shocked to find that she didn't even have a chance to use it. In such a short time, she didn't even have a chance to run away. How could she fight? Shu Xiaoman took a deep breath and looked extremely serious. I lost. Han Fei smiled and said, your reaction speed is already very fast. His battle awareness wasn't bad either. But if there's a chance, I can increase my strength. Young man pursed her lips helplessly. I'll listen to you. Shu Xiaoman didn't take it seriously. Even Lord Yu Chen had lost. Wasn't it normal for her to lose as well? He heard her say, let's go. I'll bring you around the Flying Feather Command. However, I guess a lot of people are curious. Is everyone in the Yin-Yang heaven like you? Han Fei couldn't have felt better. He said gloomily, this is regional discrimination. Let me tell you, in our Yin-Yang sky, I'm pretty good looking. Shu Xiaoman tilted her head and said, okay. Our Flying Feather Command is located on the west side of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, close to the realm of Frost. The city covered an area of about 50,000 kilometers, but they were all quite scattered. There are 8 other large tribes like the Flying Feather Command on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. This is all the humans in our Waterwood heaven. There are hundreds of millions of them. Han Fei immediately understood. That was right. There couldn't be 72 venerables and only one human venerable. It seemed that the humans were divided into 9 tribes. In this way, there should be 9 venerable realm experts. However, Shu Xiaoman said, when Lord Yu Chen becomes a venerable, there will be 1 more tribe. By then, there will be 10 tribes. Han Fei said in surprise, every venerable can form a tribe? Shu Xiaoman nodded. Of course. The Cloud Sea Divine Tree is very large. Even if there are 10 tribes, they can't live in a large area. Han Fei was puzzled. Aren't there other races here? Shu Xiaoman said solemnly, there are the Sky Clan, the Demonic Plant Clan, and the Insect Clan. But they don't actually live in many places. For example, the Sky race loved to live on the outer perimeter of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. The insect race lived in groups in the hollow of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. The demon plants didn't divide their living quarters, but they usually lived at the bottom of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Generally, except for powerful demonic plants, ordinary demonic plants won't fight. Well, the tree demons are an exception. Generally speaking, they are scattered. Han Fei said in surprise, then what if a war breaks out? How can we quickly gather the major races? Shu Xiaoman looked at Han Fei as if looking at a fool. There are venerables sending messages to us. Under the venerable one's command, they only needed to specify the location. Because the creatures of the various races live too scattered, there are many teleportation arrays in the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, which is convenient for everyone to gather quickly. Han Fei understood. To sum up, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree was so large that all the races added up couldn't live there. Because the distance between them was very far, teleportation arrays were needed. As they talked, Han Fei and Shu Xiaoman had arrived at the human gathering place. Walking out of the teleportation array, Han Fei immediately saw a large place similar to a market. All kinds of shops were placed in a mess. Some of the shops were hung on the trees, some were placed on the trunks, and some were arranged in a circle. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Han Fei looked at the tree trunks behind him, which were full of teleportation arrays. From time to time, people appeared from the arrays. The bustling crowd flowed in and out of the various shops. In addition to humans, there were also tree demons, and all kinds of things were being sold. Someone shouted, "Ice silk just made in the realm of cold ice. Does anyone want it? If you want to change your bowstring, hurry up." Someone sat in front of a stall on the ground. "I just forged a divine feather bow. I want to exchange it for the black flood dragon's bones and tendons." A big spider was weaving a web and hanging in the air. On the spider web, there were all kinds of spiritual fruits and crystals, and it was scanning the crowd. The big spider said, "Don't miss it. These are all excellent spiritual fruits." A big beetle with giant horns was carrying an identical beetle, shouting, "Junior law enforcer insect slew, if you miss it, you'll have to wait another 10 years. Immediately, someone ran over. "I want it. What do you want to exchange for?" The big beetle buzzed. "I want the black tortoise strange stone, the dragon essence grass, and the purple pole fruit." The person who asked smiled bitterly. "I don't have the dragon essence grass, but I do have the black tortoise strange stone and the purple pole fruit." The big beetle's eyes lit up. "You can exchange the dragon essence grass for the fire essence grass." The person was immediately overjoyed. "Yes." Han Fei looked at this scene in a daze, feeling a little incredulous. It was as if humans had gone to an alien society, where all sorts of strange creatures lived together harmoniously. Shu Xiaoman said proudly, "Such a big bazaar can only be found in our human gathering place. That's why countless living beings gather here every day just to shop and trade for goods." In addition to this large bazaar, there were all kinds of gossip here. A little treeman said, "Have you heard? Someone from the Yin-Yang heaven came. He's extremely strong. He defeated Master Yuchen, a human quasi-venerable." "Are you bragging? How could someone from the Yin-Yang heaven come?" "Yes, even if someone came, how could he defeat Master Yuchen? What are you thinking? Master Yuchen is going to become a venerable." The little treeman's branches trembled. "I saw it with my own eyes. That person is so ugly." Hearing this, Han Fei was shocked. "No, it's just that we're from different regions. Is it necessary?" Han Fei turned his head, only to find that Shu Xiaoman was holding back her laughter and her face was red. Cough, cough, cough. Han Fei coughed a few times and secretly used the power of Beast Roar. Immediately, many people looked at Han Fei. "Wow, is there really such a someone from the Yin-Yang heaven? But isn't that Master Young Man? Why is she with someone from the Yin-Yang heaven? Shu Xiaoman, did he really defeat Master Yuchen?" A human was astonished. "So, people from the Yin-Yang heaven look like this?" A bird circled around his head. "I think he looks okay. Don't all humans look like this?" Hearing someone talking about his appearance, Han Fei immediately said, "People from the Yin-Yang heaven look like this. This is called masculinity. There's a story in Yin-Yang heaven. According to the antiquity times, There was a peerless powerhouse called God Emperor Pangu in the human clan. His breath became the wind and clouds in the four seasons, his voice became thunders, his left eye became the sun that shone on the earth, his right eye became the moon, his torso became the mountains, rivers and earth, his blood became the surging rivers and lakes, his hair became luxuriant flowers and trees, his sweat became the dew that nourished everything. But that's not the point. The point is that he looked like me. Puff. Duang. In the immortal palace, the kettle in the Life Queen's hand fell to the ground, and the roasted squid that Jinger had just stolen from the immortal palace sprayed out of her mouth. Wushang Shui was cultivating cross-legged. Suddenly, the spiritual energy in his body was disordered and he almost blew up the courtyard. Shu Xiaoman looked at Han Fei in shock. Can people be so shameless? The little treeman waved its branches. Wow, that God Emperor Pangu is so powerful. A one-horned longhorn beetle whipped its tentacles. Don't listen to him. Such a strong expert must have big horns. Only the insect clan can be so excellent. In an instant, a large group of people, treemen, insects, and birds all looked over. Someone asked, "Can I spar with him?" A girl asked, "Although I know he's bragging, what's his name? It's the first time I've seen such a person." A big bird exclaimed, "Look, he has a venerable token." Well, it's really a venerable token. Where did he get it? Shu Xiaoman said to Han Fei, "Because you may have to live here for 3 years in the future. So, you'll have to meet the other races sooner or later. Why don't we do it today?" Han Fei didn't know what to say. Am I being treated as a monkey? Han Fei thought to himself, there are billions of creatures in all races. If I show them every day, I won't have to do anything. Immediately Han Fei said, "Let's wait. They just need to know that I'm here." Shu Xiaoman nodded. Then Shu Xiaoman said to everyone, "Everyone, Han Fei still has a lot of things to do in the Shuemu heaven. I won't meet you one by one. What about you guys? Do whatever you need to do. We'll be leaving first." "Wait a minute, I want to spar with him." Someone was inviting him to fight. Shu Xiaoman tilted her head. "Go away. When you can beat me, come to Han Fei." While talking, Shu Xiaoman beckoned Han Fei into a teleportation array. After passing through several teleportation arrays in a row, Han Fei found that the branches around him became thinner and thinner. They should be walking to the periphery of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. At this moment, the two of them stood on a huge empty branch. Shu Xiaoman said, "There have always been legends about the Yin-Yang heaven in the Shuemu heaven. So, they know that you are from the Yin-Yang heaven, so they will naturally be curious. You don't have to worry about it. But I said that you are here to transcend a tribulation. Is it urgent?" Han Fei thought for a moment. Transcending a tribulation was not deducing the void fishing art, so it shouldn't cause too much noise. Han Fei thought for a moment. "I can do it anytime." Shu Xiaoman was taken aback. "You can transcend a tribulation now? Is everything ready?" Third update. Asking for votes. Well, don't worry. I've been thinking about the plot recently. Take your time. It'll be quick. End of this chapter. Chapter 1178. During the 4 years in Wind and Rain Village, Han Fei had already adapted to his own power. Even though Zhang Xian hadn't cultivated for the past 4 years, the fact that a level 9 spirit meridian could absorb spiritual energy naturally wasn't to be underestimated. Therefore, Han Fei's transition to the peak-level law enforcer realm was exceptionally smooth. As for what to prepare, Han Fei knew that the heavenly tribulation was not something that could be done in a day or two, and he had helped others pass the heavenly tribulation more than once or twice. He was not interested in the power of the heavenly tribulation. He even felt that ordinary heavenly talents might not be as powerful as the lightning that he had deduced. Han Fei was walking on the path of invincibility. Shimin Linglan was right. Even heavenly tribulations were his enemies. Besides, Han Fei planned to break through the 4th level of the indestructible body with the power of this tribulation. Shu Xiaoman pondered for a moment and said, "Because our Shuemu heaven can't undergo tribulation on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, Every tribulation here basically represents a battle. If you're going through the tribulation, I'll need an expert to protect you. I can't do that. Han Fei said bluntly, Jing'er might come. Jing'er? Young man was stunned again. Then she widened her eyes and looked at Han Fei in astonishment. You mean the static messenger? Xu Xiao was full of astonishment. Honorable Jing was the most special honorable in the waterwood sky. She was the personal maid of her lady queen. If Messenger Jing protected him, wouldn't it mean that even the queen would pay attention to Han Fei's tribulation? Han Fei slightly nodded. It was the heavenly tribulation. If the battle in the Shuemu sky was also fierce, the sea demons would definitely not sit idly by. After all, as long as the person undergoing the tribulation didn't die, it would mean that the waterwood sky had gained another explorer. Although explorers could not compare to venerable ones, they were not cabbages, and it was not every day that someone would go through the heavenly tribulation. Even though there were hundreds of millions of people, the explorer-level powerhouses of the thousand-star city were still there. How many explorers were there? Even if Shuemu heaven was much stronger, how many people could undergo tribulation in a year? Based on Han Fei's experience in controlling the City of Justice, it was already impressive for 3 to 5 people to undergo tribulation in a year, and that was under the crazy supply of resources. Normally, there would be an average of 1 or 2 people undergoing tribulation every year, which meant that this city had a deep heritage. Xu Xiaomen said with a complicated expression, Then I'm afraid we have to wait even more. I originally thought that if you were going to undergo your tribulation, you'd choose the realm of ice because that's the safest place. But if Envoy Jing personally takes action, you might have to reconsider the location of your tribulation. Han Fei? Young Shu said, You don't know. Although there were constant battles of various sizes between Shuemu Tian and the 2 great royal cities. However, in every tribulation transcendence, the eruption of the tribulation transcendence battle was secondary. Do you know that after becoming an explorer, you will need to seek the Great Tao? Han Fei nodded. Sure. The explorer realm was a realm of seeking the Tao. Breaking through the venerable realm meant confirming the Great Tao. As for the venerable realm, Water Deity had once told him that it was a process of constantly repairing the Great Tao that had already been determined. Only when he confirmed that his Great Tao was flawless would he attempt to become a king. The Great Tao was different from the path of law enforcement. It was a lifelong goal. Once it was confirmed, it would depend on how far you could go on this path. Young Shu said, To seek the Tao, one must not let the Tao be incomplete. It's best to get rid of all distracting thoughts before going through the trial and cut off many mortal karma and so on. Han Fei continued to nod. The reason why the thug patriarch turned Lin Miao Miao into an undead creature was to make up for the knot in his heart and to help him get rid of this obstacle. Otherwise, why would a venerable care about the life and death of an ordinary great fishing master? Young Shu continued, But here comes the problem. The Sea clan has billions of creatures, much more than the other clans in the Shuemu Tian. Therefore, every time someone from our Shuemu Tian transcends a tribulation, the Sea clan will send out many sea demons to transcend the tribulation together and then provoke them. In this case, if you don't fight and need to consolidate your cultivation, then, when the battle starts, countless creatures will die for you, which will be a huge knot in your heart. Therefore, in every tribulation of the Shuemu Tian, there will be a battle. Many people died in this tribulation transcendence battle. No one who can survive is weak. In this way, the Sea clan also planted a knot in the hearts of our explorers. Han Fei asked in surprise, Really? Young Shu nodded. Of course, the path of cultivation is full of difficulties and tribulations. What we pursue is more and more perfect ourselves and the purest Great Tao. Of course, the Sea clan won't ignore the tribulation of our human race and other races. Although you can also transcend the tribulation in the realm of ice, those who choose to do so usually won't be too strong. The Sea clan may not care too much, but they will still pay attention to it. But you are so strong that even Master Yu Chen is no match for you. You shouldn't transcend the tribulation in the realm of ice. Han Fei seemed to understand a little. No wonder from the beginning to the end, no one had specifically asked him when he would transcend the tribulation and where he would go. This was fucking chosen for him. As a person from the Yin-Yang heaven, he was a guest. If he transcended the tribulation in the realm of ice, he would definitely be underestimated. But if he transcended the tribulation in other places, he might be able to fight back against the Sea Clan. Han Fei said casually, "Got it? In that case, don't worry. How difficult are the major battlefields in the Shuemu Tian?" Young Shu was relieved. She stroked her hair and replied solemnly, "There are 4 battlefields in the Shuemu Tian. Among them, there is the whole sea in the south, which is the daily trial ground of the various races. There is the realm of ice in the north, which is not only a trial ground but also a place where strong masters die in battle. There is an ice wall erected in the realm of ice, and battles often break out there. It ranks 3rd. Han Fei's heart did a flip. It didn't sound simple. A wall defending one side must have suffered a lot. Young Shu continued, "The fiercest battles are in the Sea of Flames in the west. Although the Sea Clan lives in the sea, there are also creatures who can cultivate in extremely cold and hot places. There is a saying that people are as violent as fire, so the battles in the Sea of Flames are the most violent. But the most difficult battles are in the Dark War Port in the east. There are at least 5 venerables guarding there all year round. From time to time, some venerables will go there to investigate. When the battles are at their fiercest, one venerable dies almost every 100 years. It is said that more than 100 venerables have died in the Dark War Port in the Shuemu Tian. Among them, less than 10 died on other battlefields, and the rest all died in the Dark War Port." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. The number of fallen venerables reached 100? Han Fei calculated. How many venerables were there in the 1,000-star city in total? As expected, having a king and not having a king were completely different in nature. In this case, didn't it seem that the eye of the heavenly law was watching the Yin-Yang heaven? Otherwise, if the Yin-Yang heaven could break through to the king realm, it might be a different result. Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Where did Yu Chen break through?" Young Shu Man frowned slightly. She didn't like Han Fei calling her lord by his name. However, thinking that Han Fei was also an extremely strong master, she replied, "The Dark War Port. It is said that in the battle that year, Lord Yi killed 3 enemy explorers in one battle." Han Fei didn't give an immediate answer. He knew that his heavenly tribulation, if nothing unexpected happened, should not be weak. As for where to undergo the heavenly tribulation, it depended on the situation. He couldn't just listen to young Shu Man. As for himself, he had to go and see it. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Let's go to the realm of ice first. Then, to the Sea of Flames, and finally to the Dark War Port. How about that?" Young Shu Man nodded. As for how to choose, it was up to Han Fei. Although she wanted to see Han Fei kill everyone after the heavenly tribulation, the Dark War Port was indeed very dangerous. Those who came here were guests, and Han Fei's identity couldn't be simple. Emissary Jing even gave him the venerable token. Different from young Shu Man's thoughts, Han Fei instantly understood why the Life Queen asked Jing to give him the venerable token. Is there anything else that can attract more firepower than this thing? Once he wore the venerable token, he was afraid that the gazes of the entire sea race would fall on him. He wondered if the Life Queen was testing him. Or did she want to see his ability? Young Shu Man asked, "Shall we go to the realm of ice now?" Han Fei said, "My time is limited. I only have 3 years. Let's go now." Young Shu Man was taken aback for a moment. What can you do in 3 years? As far as she knew, it was fast enough to break through to the explorer level in 3 years. After the breakthrough, it was already the limit to stabilize a little. However, although it was extremely dangerous to break through to the explorer level in the Waterwood Heaven, as long as you didn't die, you could be saved anyway. After all, the Life Queen would give you a drop of the spring of life. However, since Han Fei wanted to go, he might as well go. After a while, Han Fei followed young Shu Man and took a few more teleportation arrays. Han Fei felt a headache coming on. "Well, young man, may I ask, is there a map on this Cloud Sea Divine tree? I feel like I'm going to get lost." Young Shu Man exclaimed, I almost forgot that the main routes on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree have a map. I forgot to give it to you. Immediately, young Shu Man took out a jade slip and handed it to Han Fei. Han Fei scanned it with his perception and was stunned. There must be hundreds of thousands of teleportation arrays. Young Shu Man said, this is the main route map, which is available for all clans. However, there are always some people who don't like to live in groups. Therefore, the teleportation arrays that they built themselves are not on this map. Han Fei searched for a long time. Then where are we now? Shu Xiaoman pointed at the 2 strings of numbers engraved on the top of the teleportation formation and said, we are now 1,500 kilometers north, number 396 teleportation formation, which can lead to 800 kilometers north, number 1123 teleportation formation. Han Fei was stunned and thought to himself, if you didn't tell me, I would have thought this was a representation of latitude and longitude. Han Fei glanced at the map and found that it seemed that he would be able to leave the Cloud Sea Divine Tree after passing 6 more teleportation arrays. Immediately, Han Fei hushed them. Sorry for the trouble. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1179. After only 3 teleportation arrays, Han Fei had already found people coming and going. At the beginning, there weren't many. However, the further he went, the more people he met. These people? Well, these people or creatures were mostly hidden fishers. There were few hanging fishers, and the frequency of law enforcers was not very high. Walking along the main road, Han Fei found that the Cloud Sea Divine Tree had been mixed with so many races that some of them were you and me. There were all kinds of creatures here, especially those insects, some of which looked exactly the same and were difficult to distinguish. For example, spiders were also insects, centipedes were also insects, golden tortoise beetles were also insects, and Hercules were also insects. Of course, for some reason, golden tortoise beetles were the majority here. They came in all kinds of shapes, but pure gold was rare. There were also Hercules beetles, which were the kind of insects with all kinds of strange big horns on their heads. The horns on the heads of these Hercules beetles were spear-shaped, pants-shaped, shovel-shaped, knife-shaped, and half-moon-shaped. Han Fei was dazzled by them. And when humans, birds, insects, or tree demons saw Han Fei, they all looked at his face in shock. Then they looked at the venerable token on his waist. Han Fei was speechless and said with a black face, I was forced to do this. Shu Xiaoman? Han Fei's face began to change. The next moment, Zhang Xuanyu's handsome face appeared on Han Fei's face. Wow, after seeing Han Fei's new face, Shu Xiaoman couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, although you are a little different from the humans of our Shuemu heaven, this is not bad. So, which face is the real one? I knew human beings couldn't be so ugly. Seeing Han Fei's almost angry eyes, Shu Xiaoman immediately realized something and shut up. Han Fei snorted, thinking, thank God that Zhang Xuanyu didn't come to the Shuemu heaven. Otherwise, Wu Shangshui would have killed him in less than 3 days. After all, the people of the Shuemu heaven were really good-looking. Knowing that she had said something wrong, Shu Xiaoman couldn't help but say apologetically, well, in fact, you were quite fierce before. Well, yes, very fierce. Han Fei rolled his eyes, thinking, don't compliment me if you don't know how to. But Han Fei said solemnly, you will eventually find how popular a man like me is in the Yin-Yang heaven. Forget it, I won't talk to you anymore. The reason why I use this face is to avoid trouble. I don't want to waste my time. When Han Fei walked out of the last teleportation array, he found that the surrounding temperature plummeted. When he walked out, he saw a white glacier. There were also a large number of ice jars. Han Fei saw Han and saw Yi Fei. You. Young man nodded and said, because there is no land on this side of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, the area that the roots of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree can reach has become the Bone Jar Plain. It seemed like the number of living beings that had died in battle was simply too many. Shu Xiaoman said, actually, it's just a souvenir. There are only signs in the bone jars. Sometimes, when the ice jars break, it means that the person has finally died. Then, new bone jars will be put up, and the cycle will start again. Han Fei nodded slightly. Where is the battlefield? Do we still need teleportation arrays? Shu Xiaoman shook her head. There are no teleportation arrays in the bone jar ice field. People fly there to pay homage to the heroes who have sacrificed themselves. We can fly there directly from here. With that, Shu Xiaoman was about to take Han Fei to the bone jar ice field. But when she turned her head, she found that Han Fei didn't move. Not only did he not move, but Han Fei also took out a boat. Shu Xiaoman was surprised, looking at the strangely shaped, gorgeous wind god boat. Is this a boat? Han Fei patted the boat and said, "Come on. Don't you have a boat?" Shu Xiaoman was a little confused. But we rarely use boats, and I've never seen such a boat. And how can we sail on the ice? The wind god boat floated directly into the air, cut through the sky with a swish, and swept across the sky. Shu Xiaoman exclaimed, "Boat, how can a boat fly?" Han Fei frowned slightly. That's not right. Doesn't the Shuemu heaven have floating stones? Although the immortal palace is also supported by the cloud sea divine tree. But doesn't the immortal palace need floating stones? Or is the Yin-Yang heaven special? Han Fei said, "This is a fishing boat unique to the Yin-Yang heaven. It can be controlled and flown. My boat is quite ordinary. It can only fly more than 60,000 kilometers a day." Taking out the wind god boat, Han Fei wondered if it was time to upgrade the wind god boat. With his current attainments in arrays, he could easily make the wind god boat reach a speed of 80,000 kilometers. If he upgraded the materials and refined the wind god boat into a semi-divine weapon, then it shouldn't be a problem to double the speed. Of course, this didn't seem to make sense. Even if the wind god boat doubled its speed, it wouldn't be as fast as flying. Besides, he had to refine it into a divine weapon. Only then could he fly as fast as a shuttle. After flying out hundreds of kilometers, Han Fei looked back at the cloud sea divine tree. At that time, a heartfelt shock came from the bottom of his heart. Because even at this time, he still couldn't see the top or bottom of the cloud sea divine tree. While the wind god boat was galloping, one perception after another swept over him. Some law enforcers even chased him all the way, wondering what this thing was. However, when someone saw the venerable token on Han Fei, he immediately exclaimed, "Venerable token? I'm sorry. Buzz, buzz, buzz." A large group of big-winged flying insects chased the wind god boat and exclaimed, Did the humans invent some kind of divine weapon? It looks like a boat. This boat looks so strange. Why can a boat fly?" The insects chattered for a long time, and even two ladybug-like insects landed on the wind god boat, not paying much attention to Han Fei's venerable token. Then there were two. At first, there were two ladybugs, then a red-winged demonic insect, and then a purple white-headed sparrow landed on the boat. Han Fei said, Hey, don't stand up anymore, or the boat will be crushed by you." The big beetle asked, "Human, you look a bit strange." The insect didn't look strange, but it just felt a bit different. However, in their eyes, humans all looked the same and couldn't tell them apart. The bird said, "Wait. When I came here, I heard that someone from the Yin-Yang heaven came. However, everyone said that the person is powerful but a bit ugly." Han Fei's face darkened as he listened. Shu Xiaoman was still trying to hold back her laughter. Han Fei immediately roared, "Well, what's that? I'm in a hurry. Take your time." Then with a swish, the wind god boat disappeared. Shu Xiaoman was about to say something, but Han Fei grabbed her and with a swish, the two of them disappeared. Shu Xiaoman had never seen the heavenly void divine walking technique. She exclaimed, "So fast. That's at least the speed of an intermediate explorer." Han Fei said, "Are the Zergs all talkative?" Shu Xiaoman nodded. "In a sense, a little bit. The Sky Clan is much better. They are usually aloof." As they talked, the two had crossed the bone jar ice field. At this time, Han Fei found that above this ice, a large number of humans, insects, tree demons, and giant beaked birds were fighting on this ice. Shu Xiaoman said, after crossing the bone jar ice field, "It's the land of winter. This is just an ordinary battlefield, mostly hanging fissures and hidden fissures. When you reach the level of law enforcer, you're usually in the depths of the land of winter. Han Fei saw the beak of the giant beaked bird turn on the ice and immediately dig a hole, and then a little tray ant dug out the thick ice. Then a bunch of creatures came out of the hole. There were sea demonic plants, sea worms, crabs, and strange fish in the shape of snowballs. Although they knew that someone was passing by in the sky, they had long been used to it and didn't pay attention to it. They just thought it was an explorer passing by. Half an hour later, Han Fei saw a huge ice wall that spanned a long distance in the distance. He knew that this was the ice wall that Shu Xiaoman had mentioned. In his perception, there were battles of various sizes going on outside the city wall. However, the intensity was not high. Most of them were battles between law enforcers, and there were no battles between explorers. Han Fei said in surprise, "Is this the level of the battle?" Shu Xiaoman said, "You can't expect there to be battles every day. Otherwise, the Shuemu heaven would have been destroyed in the war. Even strong masters need time to accumulate strength. This is just a training exercise for both sides. Occasionally, there will be a big battle, which is to consume the strength of the Shuemu heaven. They intend to slowly nibble away at our strength in this way." Swish, swish. When Han Fei and Shu Xiaoman landed on the city wall, they saw that the city wall was thousands of meters thick, like a super large ice cube. On the outside side of the city wall, there were dense arrays. It could be seen how much effort the strong masters of the Shuemu heaven had put into this ice wall. At this moment, many law enforcers were walking on the city wall. There were also creatures of various races setting up stalls here, but there were not many stalls. When Han Fei and Shu Xiaoman arrived, many people scanned them with their perception. However, although Shu Xiaoman was a heavenly talent, there were so many creatures on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree that it was impossible for everyone to know her, so no one paid attention to her. In short, the realm of ice was, in a sense, a place for training. Under normal circumstances, the number of deaths was very low. Shu Xiaoman pointed outside the ice wall and said, "Some people will cross the ice wall and go straight into the deep sea. If you want to see a real battle between strong masters, you can only see it outside. There are many special resources that can only be obtained in the outer seas." Han Fei smiled. "Do you dare to go?" Shu Xiaoman was slightly taken aback. Within 100,000 kilometers. Beyond this range, it's hard to predict. Han Fei pondered for a moment. "Why don't you wait here and I'll go out and have a look?" Shu Xiaoman was a little surprised. "Are you in such a hurry? Do you want to experience the battle on the ice wall first?" Looking at the battle in the distance, Han Fei shook his head slightly. It's boring." Shu Xiaoman saw Han Fei licking his lips. For some reason, her heart skipped a beat. What does this guy want to do? Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1180. Different from everyone in the Shuemu heaven, Han Fei felt something was wrong when he heard young man talk about the 4 realms of the Shuemu heaven. In the Yin-Yang heaven, human beings were actually the ones who took the initiative to attack. For example, when he was on the Scattered Stars Island, there were often battles led by strong people to kill them. However, in the Shuemu heaven, the realm of ice was guarded by ice and snow walls, the Dark War Port was guarded by the Fearless Barrier, the Sea of Flames had the Wall of Flames, and the whole sea seemed to have an endless trench. From the looks of it, Shuemu Sky's fighting style was more of a defensive one, just like how they would defend a city. It was not wrong to say that this was the case. In different times, different fighting routes had their own advantages, but the Shuemu heaven had been defending for countless years. Hadn't they taken the initiative? Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Young man, have any strong masters from the Shuemu heaven attacked the royal city?" Attacked the royal city? Young man was dumbfounded. Who would be stupid enough to attack the royal city? Since it was called the royal city, there must be a huge deep-sea demon guarding it. Young man shook her head repeatedly. She had never thought of this kind of thing. Han Fei grinned. Sure enough. If there was a king in the Yin-Yang heaven, According to Shueishenqi's character and the style of the Thug Academy, he would definitely give it a try. It was hard to say whether he could defeat the other party or not, but he would definitely fight. Besides, since most of the time, the realm of ice was only used as a training ground, didn't it mean that the outer sea rarely fought? In other words, the outer sea had never been robbed, right? Han Fei glanced at Forge the Universe. Over the years, although he had accumulated a lot of resources, he had used a lot of them. Especially when he was reincarnated, he consciously and unconsciously used a lot of resources. Han Fei immediately fixed his eyes. How far is it to the royal city? Young man didn't know what he meant and replied blankly, the royal city is in the direction of the Dark War port and the Sea of Flames. Han Fei almost laughed out loud. He quickly coughed and said, young man, you know, I came to the Yin-Yang heaven to undergo a tribulation and to gain experience. Now that I'm here, I can't go back after taking a look at the ice and snow walls, can I? Young Shu said, if it's not too far away, I'll go with you. This official has instructed me to do so. Han Fei waved his hand. I may have to go very far, more than 100,000 kilometers. Young Shu man was surprised. That's dangerous. There are often Tao-seeking realm monsters there. Han Fei grinned. Well, actually, I'm going to look for a Tao realm demon. Ordinary peak sea spirits are no longer enough for me to gain experience. Therefore, it is dangerous for me to go there. You stay here. I'll be back as soon as possible. I'll be gone for at most half a month at most. No! Shu Xiaoman said firmly, as long as you go out, I have to follow you. You're not familiar with Shuemu Sky at all, and you still want to go out alone for half a month? Besides, you're about to undergo tribulation, so what else do you need to train for? Han Fei was dumbfounded. I just want to experience how it feels to fight a Tao-seeking state demon. Shu Xiaoman glanced at Han Fei's venerable token and immediately took a breath. Then I'll go too. Anyway, you have the venerable token. Once something goes wrong, the silent messenger can come very quickly. Han Fei glanced at his venerable token and quickly stuffed it into his trousers. This thing couldn't be exposed for the time being. Otherwise, he felt that Shu Xiaoman looked at the venerable token more than at him. Han Fei rolled his eyes. Okay, you can go with me, but you have to listen to my orders. Shu Xiaoman nodded. I won't participate in your training. Besides, I'm not an ordinary peak-level law enforcer. My spiritual beast is a lightning fish. If I have to run, I can run very fast. Hearing this, Han Fei was relieved. In his opinion, as long as he didn't encounter two advanced explorers or peak-level explorers at the same time, he would be able to run away. If he really encountered a peak-level explorer, he would call Jing as soon as possible and then escape at full speed. Han Fei nodded. Okay, you're right. With that, Han Fei leaped into the air and flew straight out of the sea. When Han Fei and Shu Xiaoman left the ice wall, someone was slightly surprised. You've just arrived. Why are you going out so soon? However, more people didn't take it seriously. As long as they didn't go far, it wouldn't be a big problem. At most, they would attract some sea spirit powerhouses. 3,000 kilometers away. In Han Fei's perception, 3 sea spirit creatures appeared. An ice flood dragon had been following them from a distance, and 2 half-mermaids were also following them secretly. Shu Xiaoman looked a little nervous. Should we kill them? Otherwise, they will call for more people and try to surround us. Han Fei responded, no, fly slowly. Let them follow us for a while and wait for them to launch an attack. Shu Xiaoman muttered in her heart, wait for them to launch an attack? There was no telling whether Han Fei was extremely confident or overly proud. This was the outer sea, not the ice wall. If something really happened, no one would immediately appear to help him. 5,000 kilometers away. In Han Fei's perception, 7 peak-level sea spirit creatures appeared, and he even heard a half-mermaid's voice transmission, should we do it now? And the person who was asked said, don't do it. This place is too close to the ice wall. Besides, humans who dare to go out of the sea are definitely not weak. Call 2 more people and try to kill them. When they were thousands of kilometers away, Han Fei suddenly said, "They are going to attack. Follow me down." With that, Han Fei quickly descended and landed on the ice. Han Fei punched the ice and carefully looked around. Seeing that there was no one around, he quietly took out a fishing rod. With a swish, the fishing hook hooked a squid that had just entered the sea demon realm. In the distance, a half-mermaid said in surprise, "What is this guy doing?" The ice flood dragon's eyes were cold. Did he come here just to hunt a squid in the sea demon realm? A half-mermaid shouted, "He is definitely a peak-level law enforcer. No matter what he is doing, kill him." Swish, swish. Han Fei casually pinched the squid to death and stuffed it into Forge the Universe, smiling slightly. Shu Xiaomen asked, "How about it? How many are there in total?" Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth. "Only 9. Shu Xiaomen. Before Shu Xiaomen asked, she heard Han Fei murmur, 3, 2, 1, swish. Suddenly, Shu Xiaomen found that Han Fei disappeared. At the moment when Han Fei disappeared, a half-mermaid suddenly shouted, "Not good, this person is too fast. He doesn't look like a peak-level law enforcer. Retreat." However, just after this half-mermaid shouted, less than a second later, suddenly, there was a boom, sound, and a cold light suddenly appeared in the water. Then, the ice WRM's head was chopped off with a single slash. The fastest black fish was about to use a secret technique when half of its body turned into black light. As a result, the shadow of a sledgehammer crashed down, and its head was suddenly split into pieces. Explorer. He is an explorer. The space twisted, and with 2 puffs, 2 escaping half-mermaids were directly chopped into pieces. From beginning to end, they didn't even see how Han Fei attacked. The remaining 5 half-mermaids shouted in unison, "Sea King arrives." Bam, bam, bam. The ice burst open, and in an instant, a huge waterman appeared, a giant shark appeared, and an octopus swept around. At the moment when Han Fei attacked, Shu Xiaoman had already rushed in Han Fei's direction. She thought Han Fei is strong, but there are 9 sea spirit realm powerhouses on the other side, and I should be able to deal with 2. However, Shu Xiaoman had only run 100 kilometers. A roar burst out in the void. In an instant, hundreds of beast phantoms rushed on the bottom of the sea, and the ice within dozens of kilometers cracked. Shu Xiaoman watched the waterman collapse from a distance, and the shark's teeth were all broken. When she arrived, she saw that Han Fei was holding a total of 9 sea-swallowing seashells and a bunch of semi-divine weapons or low-quality divine weapons, which were thrown on the ground like garbage. And Han Fei was muttering, "Not rich. The Sea Clan in the realm of ice is a bit poor." Gulp. Shu Xiaoman swallowed and looked at Han Fei in shock, as if there were 10,000 iron-head fish crashing in her heart. "I haven't even run yet, and your battle is already over? Also, you're holding 9 sea-swallowing seashells, and you claim to be poor?" Han Fei shook his head and rummaged through their sea-swallowing seashells in disdain. After a dozen seconds or so, Han Fei said with a dark expression, "I think, according to my confirmation, although the sea race in the realm of ice may be a little poor, they are not as good as the sea race in the realm of ice. However, judging from the proportion of resources they obtained, most of them were spirit fruits and profound stones. This means that there are a lot of resources outside the realm of frost." Young man Shu was stunned. "Aren't you here to gain experience?" Shu Xiaoman pointed to the semi-divine weapons and low-quality divine weapons on the ground. "These are low-quality divine weapons. Can you just leave it here?" Han Fei nodded and picked up the weapons on the ground. He said righteously, "Isn't this an experience for me? Plundering the resources of the sea race to replenish the lives of tens of thousands of people. Isn't that right?" But Shu Xiaoman choked and was rendered speechless by Han Fei. Why does it sound so reasonable? But in her heart, for some reason, she always felt that Han Fei was here to rob them. But no. Shu Xiaoman pointed to the sea demons. "What about them? 9 sea spirit realm experts died at once. There will definitely be Tao-seeking state demons coming to check. What should we do now? Return to the ice wall?" Han Fei immediately tilted his head and looked at Xu Xiaoman, thinking, why is this girl so stubborn? If I didn't want to be discovered, I would have taken these sea demons away. I must have kept them for a reason. Han Fei said, don't panic. At this critical moment, the only thing we have to do is wait. Xu Xiaoman immediately took a breath and exclaimed, are you really going to wait for a Tao-seeking state demon? The third update, please vote. The update was delayed by an hour today, mainly because I was too busy. I didn't even have a place to set up my computer. Actually, the plot progresses very quickly. Don't panic, the exciting plot will come quickly. Well, it's fine if I keep feeling good. There are ups and downs, flat scenes, climaxes, twists and so on. Let's not talk about this anymore. The author is going to get hit with a brick. Because I'm clean, my hands that write have to carry a brick. In the end, I still have to bear everything. Laughing emoji. End of this chapter. Chapter 1181. Inside the concealment array. Han Fei said, well, young man, if I have too many resources on me, is there any way that I can sell them quickly without setting up a stall? Young man said, don't you want to give back to thousands of creatures? Han Fei was annoyed. If I give back to them, they should give back to me, right? I actually have very low requirements. It doesn't matter if I suffer some losses. Young man Xu felt that she had seen through Han Fei's mind. This guy was out to rob. But now, young man Xu was shocked by Han Fei's combat efficiency. It was too fast. Just now, there were 9 Sea Spirit Realm powerhouses. Ordinary law enforcers would be lucky if they could escape. However, in Han Fei's hands, the situation was reversed. At this point, young man Xu probably knew why she lost. And she probably knew why Han Fei dared to go deep into the outer sea of the realm of ice alone. Young man Xu said leisurely, if, in fact, you are not afraid of suffering losses, you can have 2 ways. One is the market of our human race, which is very lively. The other is to directly exchange with Venerable Snow. It's just that the things in Venerable Snow's hands are not affordable for ordinary people. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Oh, really? Han Fei thought, there are only 2 reasons why I can't afford it. Either the quality is not up to standard, or the quantity is not up to standard. I don't belong to the category of people who can't afford it. It's not a big deal to rob more. That's what I used to do. Under the concealment of the array, Han Fei waited for a full hour. In addition to the Sea Spirit Realm creatures passing by, most of the sea demons exclaimed that something had happened here. However, none of the Tao-seeking realm monsters appeared. Han Fei was a little impatient. Is the royal city so capricious? A Sea Spirit Realm creature was nothing in their eyes? They don't even send someone to check on us? Young man Xu took a breath and said, maybe this place is too close to the ice and snow city wall. Why didn't you say so earlier? You made me wait for a long time. Immediately, Han Fei removed the concealment array and the breath-concealing array and said, let's go to the outer sea. Young man Xu frowned and reminded him, Han Fei, I know you are very strong. However, it was impossible for 9 sea spirits to die at the same time without anyone noticing. There will definitely be people guessing that an explorer has taken action on the ice wall. Han Fei glanced at her silently. Why don't you go back? I like to act alone. You're too slow. Young man Xu felt that he was despised. He must have been despised. Young man shook her head firmly. No, I want to follow you. Han Fei was speechless. The people of the Shuemu heaven are a bit simple. How could he be so stupid? Han Fei immediately said, okay, but no matter what happens in the future, listen to me. Xu Xiaoman nodded and thought to herself, you, a top genius of the Yinyang heaven, aren't afraid. I can't lose face for the Shuemu heaven. The 2 of them set off again. Because they were all peak law enforcers, the sea folk didn't notice them at all. About 50,000 kilometers away from the ice city wall, Han Fei discovered that there were mines and spiritual fruits under the ice outside the domain of ice. There were also a lot of creatures here. However, the creatures here usually had a special characteristic. Except for some special species, most of them were snails and crustaceans. Besides, their colors were mostly ice blue and white, and there were basically sharp blades or spikes on their bodies. Was it because they wanted to break the ice? That's why they evolved like this. After several times, young man Shu said, "Han Fei, I found spiritual fruits." Han Fei was unmoved. "Don't worry about it." Young man Shu asked, "You don't want spiritual fruits? We just need to spend a little time to get them." Han Fei curled the corner of his mouth slightly. "A few spiritual fruits are not worth wasting time. By the way, which part of the domain of ice is remote? Is it because the creatures of the Shuemu heaven don't go there often?" Young man Shu pointed to the west. "Go west, because the west of the domain of ice is connected to the Sea of Flames. So, the temperature and environment there are better. However, it's usually more dangerous there." Now, young man Shu no longer resisted Han Fei's questions. She didn't think that Han Fei was the kind of person who would risk his life for no reason. Han Fei said, "Let's go west." An hour later, young man Shu saw Han Fei slow down. She sensed that there were a lot of sea spirit realm creatures. Besides, these sea spirit realm creatures were relatively concentrated. Although there were no peak-level sea spirits, there were 3 sea spirit realm creatures within 1,000 kilometers, which could only mean that this place was getting more and more dangerous. Suddenly, one of the crabs suddenly raised its eyes. Swish! In the blink of an eye, Han Fei disappeared with a swish. Without even breaking the ice, he appeared directly in front of the cave. In young man Shu's perception, Han Fei stepped on a breath-concealing array. Immediately afterward, the crab suddenly lay on the ground and was cut in half by a knife. Han Fei said to her via voice transmission, "Your soul power is too weak. Don't perceive anything more than 300 kilometers away. If you are discovered and the other party really calls for help, it will be too late no matter how fast I am." Young man Shu, Han Fei directly emptied the crab's hole, dug out 3 spiritual fruits, and grabbed a sea-swallowing seashell. Then, he stuffed the whole crab into Forge the Universe. Gulp. Shu Xiaoman swallowed her saliva. She really didn't dare to imagine what she would do if she encountered an opponent like Han Fei on the battlefield. She had a rough judgment. Under Han Fei's sneak attack, within a range of 500 kilometers, she might not even be able to use her law enforcement ability before she was obliterated by Han Fei. What terrified young man the most was that Han Fei's mastery of space power allowed him to ignore the ice and appear directly under the ice, silently. Those sea spirit realm creatures probably couldn't imagine it at all. Han Fei didn't come up but set up a breath-concealing array and a stealth array on himself, and then directly rushed to 2 places inside. Young man Shu didn't dare to perceive at will, so she focused her perception directly on Han Fei. In less than 10 minutes, 3 sea spirit realm sea demons died one after another before they could even react. When Han Fei reappeared on the wind god boat, he said lightly, "These few are relatively weak. I set up a stealth array, and breath-concealing array on the boat. You act according to the circumstances. I'm not on the boat." If this was in the 10,000 Demon Valley, this kind of situation wouldn't normally occur. And there wouldn't be sea spirit realm creatures cultivating within 100,000 kilometers of the human settlement area. Therefore, Han Fei's confidence was greatly boosted at this moment. As long as he was fast enough, he could rob them before they could react. In just an hour, Han Fei quietly killed 27 sea spirit realm sea demons. Among them, as many as 6 were at the peak of the sea spirit realm. At this moment, Han Fei was looting the undersea cave of a half-mermaid. From this person's sea-swallowing seashell, he found more than 300 spiritual fruits, more than 10,000 kilograms of spirit awakening fluid, a mid-quality divine weapon, 6 low-quality divine weapons, and several pieces of extremely high-quality minerals. Tisk, it's not as fast as robbing. Han Fei sighed with emotion. Suddenly, in his perception, a half-mermaid in a dark blue battle suit tore the void more than 800 kilometers away. And it was a cave that Han Fei had just looted. Seeing this scene, Han Fei knew that a strong master finally couldn't sit still. So many sea spirit realm sea demons had been killed in a row. The other party couldn't be indifferent. Han Fei immediately said to young man, "There's a Tao-seeking state sea demon. Don't do anything. Hold your breath and don't move." Young man's heart trembled. Is a Tao-seeking state sea demon finally here? In young man's view, Han Fei's robbing speed was too fast. If there were hundreds of freakishly strong masters like Han Fei in the Shuemu heaven, the Sea clan would never be so unscrupulous. As Han Fei said, young man didn't dare to move at all. No matter how strong she was, she couldn't resist a Tao-seeking state sea demon. But Han Fei didn't seem to see it. When the Tao-seeking state sea demon appeared, Han Fei knew that he didn't have much time left on this robbery trip. However, he didn't panic at all. Just now, he sent a voice transmission to young man just to test whether the Tao-seeking state sea demon could perceive the Tao. If it was a peak-level Tao-seeking state sea demon, it could definitely feel it. However, the other party didn't, which meant that the other party's perception was not strong enough to understand what was happening thousands of kilometers away in an instant. In this case, Han Fei was naturally relieved. Even if the other party was an advanced explorer, even if he couldn't beat him, he could still escape easily. Han Fei pretended not to notice it at all, put away the things, and slightly opened his breath-concealing array and stealth array. In an instant, the half-mermaid suddenly looked in Han Fei's direction. "Humph! I finally found you. A peak-level law enforcer?" The Tao-seeking state sea demon's eyes narrowed. Were those sea spirit state sea demons all killed by this peak-level law enforcer? If he could kill sea spirit state sea demons at such a high frequency, how could he be a peak-level law enforcer? But after sensing again, he confirmed that there was indeed only Han Fei here. Besides, there was still blood flowing in that cave. It was definitely him. A top human heavenly talent? Humph, don't even think about leaving. The man tore the void and disappeared more than 900 kilometers away. At the moment when the Tao-seeking state sea demon tore the void, Han Fei sneered. "You dare to come here alone? Are you here to deliver a package?" Rip. The void was suddenly torn apart, and Han Fei pretended to be shocked and ran away. The half-mermaid yelled, "Do you think you can run away?" At the speed of 100 kilometers per step, the half-mermaid appeared in front of Han Fei and stabbed a harpoon at him. But the next moment, Han Fei suddenly turned around and grinned. "You're here?" Chapter 1182. Han Fei's smile startled the Tao-seeking state demon. What did he mean? His first reaction was that there was an ambush here, so he hurriedly retreated. But at the moment when the clone sensed the surroundings, he heard an earth-shattering roar. At that moment, hundreds of beasts rushed at him and roared. Humph! The half-mermaid felt as if his brain was about to explode. He immediately grunted and tasted something sweet in his throat. When he finally came back to his senses, he suddenly felt a life-and-death crisis. Not only was someone competing with him for control of his body, but he also felt that his vitality was being devoured crazily. He could even feel that his vitality was being devoured at a crazy rate. He felt that his skin was becoming more compact, and his strength was being weakened. Han Fei looked calm. This time, he was waiting for a Tao-seeking state demon to test his sky-stealing technique. The 6th level of the void fishing art was called the sky-stealing technique, formerly known as the luck-stealing technique. From the name alone, the luck-stealing technique might be easier to understand. But when he used the sky-stealing technique, Han Fei knew how domineering an extremely powerful technique could be. The so-called sky-stealing technique was not really stealing the heavenly Tao. Instead, it was to steal other people's luck, to steal other people's heavenly techniques and fate. It could be understood as stealing other people's fate. Different from the law of time, the law of time could control time in a small range, speeding up or slowing it down. The strong could make the time in the area pass crazily and take people's lives. But the sky-stealing technique was different. It directly stole other people's life potential. The old turtle said leisurely, "Your technique is not weak, but it cannot transform much vitality. Besides, your root bone is extremely young, So this technique is of little use to you. Even if you suck it dry, I'm afraid it won't increase your lifespan by 10 years. This is related to your age. This was the first time that Han Fei had used the sky-swallowing technique on a Tao-seeking state demon. He could control souls through the void lines before, and now he could devour vitality through the void lines. Besides, the void lines didn't seem to be so interested in soul treasures anymore. Han Fei replied, "So, this technique is useless against me?" The old turtle said, "It's still useful. Maybe after 1,000 years, when your bones have aged, you can use this technique to keep your bones young. Take the Venerable Realm for example. Others might have a lifespan of 10,000 years, but with this technique, you might be able to extend your lifespan to 20,000 years or even longer." Han Fei was shocked. In that case, the sky-stealing technique is definitely a divine technique. Other people need fate fruits to sustain their lives, so I can just steal from others. The old turtle cackled, "However, at that time, I'm afraid you'll be treated as a devil." Han Fei curled his lips. "I don't care about demons at all. The main reason is that my objective has never been the Exalt realm, and it's the King realm instead. At that time, living for a few tens of thousands of years would be extremely easy." Therefore, Han Fei didn't feel much about the heaven-stealing art. He didn't want to devour anyone's vitality at this moment. He'd better keep the heaven-stealing art as a trump card. Well then, the Tao-seeking realm demon was shocked. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't. He saw a sword light that could tear the heavens and the earth open suddenly. Even to his death, the half-mermaid didn't know who killed him. He didn't believe that a peak-level law enforcer could be so strong. Unfortunately, he couldn't see it. Sitting on the wind god boat, Shu Xiaoman watched this scene in shock, her mouth open and her eyes widened. A Tao-seeking realm powerhouse died just like that? Didn't he just come out? Shu Xiaoman, who had witnessed the whole process, didn't know how to describe such a battle. The Tao-seeking realm demon, after tearing the void, only had time to take one step and strike with his spear. Then, he was inexplicably slashed by Han Fei's sword. Who wouldn't be horrified by this? Not to mention whether the half-mermaid had exerted his full strength or not. Not to mention the battle suit on his body, or even his physique. Even if he shot an arrow with all his strength, he wouldn't be able to seriously injure him. However, in Han Fei's hands, the battle suit was at least at the level of a divine weapon, and the super strong physique of a Tao-seeking realm cultivator, but he was slashed to death like a piece of paper? At this moment, Shu Xiaoman felt that she had underestimated Han Fei's strength. The Tao-seeking realm and the Sea Spirit realm were simply two different levels. Normally, a peak-level law enforcer, no matter how talented he was, could at most be comparable to a powerhouse who had just entered the Tao-seeking realm. But Han Fei's strength was completely beyond her understanding of power. Han Fei directly took out the sun-moon shell of this Tao-seeking realm half-mermaid. Yes, they all use sea-swallowing seashells. This guy used the sun-moon shell. However, before Han Fei could check it, he heard a voice in his heart, "Boy, why don't you run away? I feel the smell of a peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon." Han Fei was taken aback. A peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon appeared? Swish. Han Fei appeared directly on the wind god boat, put away the wind god boat, and grabbed Shu Xiaoman, who was in a daze. Let's go. Shu Xiaoman? Han Fei made up his mind. When he went back this time, he wouldn't take this burden with him. If Shu Xiaoman was not there, with his own ability, he could turn into a siren and go around again, and he would definitely be able to find a lot. However, Han Fei had only run for half an hour when the old turtle reminded him, "Go into the void. Someone is chasing us." Han Fei activated the phantom glass wings and the heaven void divine walking technique, and Shu Xiaoman only felt that there was a flash of light in front of her. At the next moment, before Shu Xiaoman realized what was going on, with a swish, her eyes had turned into a dark void. Shu Xiaoman was shocked. Can a law enforcer tear the void? Han Fei replied, "No, but when I'm fast enough, I can still rush in." More than 5,000 kilometers away, the void trembled, and a strong manfish-like expert broke out of the void. If Han Fei saw this person, he would definitely recognize him. Isn't this an Azure Sea Blue Demon? In the 10,000 Demon Valley, it was said that it was extremely difficult for Azure Sea Blue Demons to cultivate to a high level. If Han Fei saw this person, he might have other ideas about the realm of ice. Humph! You want to run after killing my people? If you want to run, I'll wait for you at the Ice City Wall. A long conch appeared in the Azure Sea Blue Demon's hand, and there was a gurgling sound. The next moment he tore the void again. It was not that he didn't want to chase and fight in the void, but that he was afraid of being ambushed. Han Fei ran all the way and shouted, "I told you not to follow me. Otherwise, it would be much more convenient for me to run alone." Shu Xiaoman gritted her teeth. "You are a guest from the Yin-Yang heaven. I told you to follow me." Han Fei was speechless. After about half an hour, the old turtle suddenly said, "You can't go back. Someone is blocking your way." Seeing that Han Fei suddenly changed directions, Shu Xiaoman wondered, "This is not the way to the Ice City Wall, is it?" Han Fei said, "The way is blocked. Let's go to the Sea of Flames." Relying on the map of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree in his mind, Han Fei changed directions and went directly in the direction of the Sea of Flames. As for the Ice City Wall, Han Fei wasn't worried at all. Since it had been erected there for thousands of years, it couldn't be broken through by a few big demons at the peak level of the Tao-seeking state. Otherwise, the realm of ice would have been broken through. Outside, within 10,000 kilometers of the Ice City Wall, 7 or 8 experts at the peak level of the Tao-seeking state came. A half-mermaid asked gloomily, "Green Demon, where is he?" The Azure Sea Blue Demon frowned and said, "He ran in the direction of the Ice City Wall. He should be here soon." Someone looked back at the direction of the Ice City Wall. "This place is too close to the Ice City Wall. We can't stay for long." Someone roared, "The Ice City Wall hasn't had a large-scale war for a long time. The Shuemu Heaven is provoking us. They slaughtered as many as 50 sea spirit state experts at once. We must teach them a lesson." A loud horn suddenly sounded on the Ice City Wall. A peak-level explorer shouted, "Everyone, prepare for battle." Chirp, chirp, clatter, clatter, hum, hum. The creatures who had set up stalls on the city wall immediately packed up and stood on the city wall. The sky was occupied by the Sky Clan and the Insect Clan in an instant. The little Trent's roots were stuck on the city wall, and some were hanging on the city wall. Their bodies were parallel to the ground. Several peak-level explorers crossed the city wall and stood in midair. Someone roared, "Does the Sea Clan want to start a war?" Someone was puzzled. There are no more Sea Clan members coming. There are only a few big demons at the peak level of the Tao-seeking state. They seem to be blocking the way. Someone pondered and said, "How many people have gone to the outer sea recently?" "Humph, no matter what, we'll drive them away when everyone is here." At this moment, someone from the Sea Clan roared, "You from the Shuemu Heaven, don't you know what you've done? You sent people to plunder the outer sea and slaughter the sea spirit state experts of the Sea Clan. This matter is not over." On the Shuemu Heaven side, many creatures were dumbfounded. "Since when did we slaughter the Sea Clan? We didn't even send people out. How could we slaughter them?" A big bird said telepathically, "Did an expert pass by the outer sea and slaughter a nest of sea demons?" A tree demon shook its branches and leaves. "Those who dare to slaughter people in the outer sea must at least be peak-level explorers. Once we're surrounded, we'll suffer a great loss." A bug buzzed. "Is it possible that a venerable was passing by? Did he pinch some people to death?" Someone was speechless. "Are you stupid? If it was really a venerable, would these people dare to chase us? The battlefield of a venerable is never the realm of ice." Someone roared, "In any case, wait for a moment and drive them away." While the Ice City Wall was preparing for war, Han Fei was quarreling with the big turtle. The big turtle said, "Idiot, there aren't many experts in this damn place. Now that those people are going to stop you, can't you go and raid their homes?" Han Fei said, "You damn turtle, I can tell that you're up to no good. I don't believe that the great realm of Frost doesn't have anyone guarding its headquarters. Old turtle, do you want me to die?" Then, you can use this as a pretext to reappear and try to seize my soul? The old turtle scolded angrily. You have this gourd. Are you afraid that I will attack you? You brat, sometimes you're brave, but sometimes you're cowardly to death. Han Fei scoffed. You stupid turtle, you are timid. Your whole family is timid. Oh. Let me remind you, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. After quarreling with the big turtle for a while, Han Fei thought quickly. In fact, it didn't seem impossible. However, he had a burden with him. He didn't want what happened to Lin Miao Miao to happen again. Besides, if he really wanted to raid a Dao-seeking realm monster, he should at least wait until he became an explorer. If he went now, the old turtle must be up to no good. And the old turtle's eyes flickered. This human is too greedy. Why isn't he greedy now? He's not tempted by such a good opportunity. Has he really seen through me? The old turtle raised his head, glanced at the demon purification pot, and was horrified. If he didn't find a way to escape from Han Fei's body now, when this kid really became an explorer, his strength would probably double. At that time, it would be even more difficult for him to escape. Han Fei didn't panic. This was just the first day he came to the Waterwood Heaven. He had 3 years to bring disaster to this place. He was not in a hurry. Han Fei turned his head and asked, "What's noteworthy about the Sea of Flames?" Shu Xiaoman was stunned and said blankly, "The Sea of Flames is similar to the realm of ice. However, the wall of flames in the Sea of Flames is only a means to screen the strong. If you want to pass through the wall of flames, you have to be at least a peak-level hidden fisher. Therefore, the wall of flames is close to the extreme battlefield. There are battles all year round, and both the human race and the sea race are guarded by venerables." Han Fei was surprised. Venerables guarded all year round? Shu Xiaoman responded, "Venerables generally don't take action. To be more precise, the extreme battlefield is more like a life and death arena. Explorers have their own battles, and law enforcers have their own battles. It's a strategic place that the sea race intends to continuously consume the combat power of the Waterwood Heaven." Han Fei's eyes lit up again. "Why didn't you say so earlier? Do they carry resources with them?" Shu Xiaoman shrank her head and looked at Han Fei in astonishment. "What do you want now?" Chapter 1183. Han Fei's speed was so fast that Shu Xiaoman found it terrifying. For the first time, she felt that speed was so important in the same realm. After running for more than an hour, Han Fei didn't know how far he had run. According to Han Fei's own estimation, he had flown more than 200,000 kilometers at full speed. He didn't even dare to think about this speed when he was still a hidden fisher. He could run so far in an hour. Therefore, the wind god boat was no longer of much use. Of course, he was only a law enforcer at the moment, and he just rushed into the void with his speed. Otherwise, with the explorer's knowledge of tearing space, he would be faster. On the sea, where there was no ice, a one-horned red shark was biting the corpse of an unknown creature. All of a sudden, a sword ray appeared out of thin air. With a puff, the shark, which was already at the early stage of the sea spirit realm, was split in half. From the beginning to the end, the big shark didn't know who it had offended while eating a meal. How did it end up being hacked to death? From the void crack, Han Fei and Shu Xiaoman walked out. Shu Xiaoman looked at the shark that was hacked to death by Han Fei in astonishment and said in shock, "How do you know there are sea creatures outside?" Han Fei said leisurely, "Would you believe me if I said I just felt it?" Shu Xiaoman immediately shook her head. "The sea is so big. Do you think you can kill sea creatures? Then why don't you just split the sea every day?" Han Fei unhurriedly put the shark into Forge the Universe and said, "Don't make a fuss. It's just a shark that has just broken through to the sea spirit realm. The temperature here is indeed a bit high. I guess we should be there after a while." This time, Han Fei took out the wind god boat. He did this because he didn't want to go to the Sea of Flames in a hurry. Besides, this was the junction between the realm of ice and the Sea of Flames. He wanted to see if there were any sea demons' nests nearby. On the wind god boat, Han Fei lay on the special sofa and said lazily, "Tell me more about the Sea of Flames." Did they come here just to fight? Didn't they even bring their sea-swallowing seashells? Shu Xiaoman said with a dark face, "Of course I will, but there won't be many good things inside. Think about it, they must have used all that good stuff and felt that they were very powerful. That's why they went to the Sea of Flames to ask for battle. It was impossible for everyone to bring a whole body full of treasures to fight, right? If he died, wouldn't he be giving it to someone else for nothing? So, if there's really something good, I'll definitely use it immediately." Han Fei frowned. That makes sense. If that's the case, there's not much meaning in just fighting. However, Shu Xiaoman added, there are many special marine creatures fighting fiercely in the Sea of Flames, and the half-mermaids only account for a small part of them. Han Fei wondered, why? Shu Xiaoman explained, although half-mermaids can resist high-intensity flames, they are not very adapted to it. Except for a few half-mermaids who specialized in this, the Sea of Flames had restrictions on their abilities. It's the same for us human manipulators and tree demons. They usually don't want to go to the Sea of Fire. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Who's going? Shu Xiaoman nodded. The Insect Clan, and the Sky Clan of the Fire attribute. As for the Sea Demons, most of them are extremely heat-resistant or have compatible attributes, so they like to go to the Sea of Fire. Han Fei took a breath and said, "Doesn't that mean that all the people living there are monsters fighting monsters? There aren't many humans, right?" Shu Xiaoman nodded. The Insect Clan is not a monster. Most of the Insect Clan creatures are very cute. Han Fei curled his lips. He really couldn't associate the Insect Clan with cuteness. Shu Xiaoman hurriedly said, "Han Fei, don't be racist. The Insect Queen is guarding the Sea of Fire. Be careful not to be heard by the Insect Queen and leave a bad impression." Han Fei immediately spurted out. He said in surprise, "The Insect Queen? Is the Insect Queen still there?" Han Fei thought to himself, "If I remember correctly, when I first came to the Shuemu Heaven, I seem to have heard some children talk about the Insect Queen. Even if she is not a king, she should at least be at the peak of the Venerable Realm, right?" Shu Xiaoman waved her hand. "No, the Insect Queen is just a nickname. There are no obstacles for the growth of the Insect Clan before they reach the King Realm. They all develop into the role of the Insect Queen. There are 28 Insect Venerables in the Shuemu Heaven. Except for one Insect King, the rest are all Insect Queens." Han Fei was stunned. He took a deep breath and said, "There are so many Venerables in the Insect Clan? Why didn't he know about the Insect Clan before? It's a bit fierce. The Shuemu Heaven has a total of 72 Venerables, not including Jing Air. One Insect Clan accounts for 28 Venerables. In other words, the Insect Clan is the race with the most Venerables in the Shuemu Heaven. The number of Venerables crushes the human race, the Sky Clan, and the Tree Demons." While controlling the Wind God boat to fly to the Sea of Fire, Han Fei asked, "How many Insect Queens are there in the Sea of Fire?" Shu Xiaoman said, "No more than 5. They are all around the fire tree and rotate once a year." Han Fei wondered, what about the other Insect Queens? Are they all in the Dark War Port? Shu Xiaoman shook her head. A small half of them are in the Dark War Port, and most of them are in the whole sea in the south. Han Fei frowned and said, "Didn't you say that the whole sea is a place for ordinary creatures to train? Why are there so many Venerables crowded in the whole sea?" Shu Xiaoman also sighed slightly and said, "That's a burst weapon." The Insect Clan is the strongest race in the Shuemu Heaven. The Venerables are only responsible for the crazy soldiers. Wait a minute. Let me ask you, what is a soldier explosion?" Shu Xiaoman nodded and hurriedly explained, "Well, you are not from the Shuemu Heaven, so you may be a little surprised to hear it. The Insect Queen can devour energy and give birth to all kinds of low-level insects. She can also pay a great price to directly give birth to peak-level law enforcers. It is said that the strongest Insect Queen can give birth to more than 300 hanging fisher or 50 hidden fisher insects a day, and no more than 5 law enforcers. If it takes time, Some insect queens will spend nearly half a year or even longer to give birth to a law enforcer insect with high potential. Wow, Han Fei was stunned. That's fucking outrageous. What kind of race is this? He had risked his life several times before he became a hanging fisher. However, an insect queen could give birth to 300 insects a day. How could there be such an unreasonable race in this world? So, this is what a soldier explosion is? Fuck, if it were in the yin-yang heaven, it would only take 3 to 5 years for these insect queens to blow up the 10,000 Demon Valley. It was simply terrifying. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed and glanced around. Regardless of whether the insect queen noticed him or not, he said directly, "The insect clan is good." Shu Xiaoman smiled and said, "Actually, it's not that exaggerated. The insect clan occupies the whole sea mainly to train their soldiers. Although the insect race reproduced very quickly, just like the other races, they also needed to go through training. For example, although the strongest insect queen can give birth to 300 hanging fisher insects a day, it's not bad if 1/5 of them can really survive to the hidden fisher realm. At most, only 4 or 5 can survive the hidden fisher realm and grow to the law enforcer realm. However, the remaining few bugs are all true powerhouses, and they have all grown up through experience." Shu Xiaoman talked about the growth and history of the insect clan, but Han Fei felt that there was a duck quacking in his ear. From the beginning to the end, he understood that the insect queen was very good at giving birth. If it weren't for the fact that explorers needed to go through a tribulation, the insect queen would directly give birth to explorer-level insects. One day later, Han Fei and the others completely entered the Sea of Flames. The so-called Sea of Flames, whether in the sky or in the sea, was really burning red. Have you ever seen the sea burning? Han Fei saw it. In Han Fei's perception, there were undulating mountains here and magma surging in the belly. But this was not the origin of the name Sea of Flames. The Sea of Flames actually originated from a big tree. That big tree was naturally not as tall as the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, nor could it cover such a large area. In contrast, the size of that tree might only be 1% of the size of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. But even so, it was already not small. Han Fei was puzzled. Why was there a tree here? Wasn't the Cloud Sea Divine Tree afraid of heat? There were flames floating in the air. The temperature here had risen to a terrifying level, probably no less than the temperature of magma. And Han Fei had just entered the Sea of Flames. Shu Xiaoman's face was solemn at the moment. If we want to enter the Sea of Flames from the outside, we need to break through the wall of flames in one fell swoop. The Sea Clan Venerable won't take action. This is the tacit understanding between the Shuemu Heaven and the Sea Clan. Once the Sea Clan Venerable takes action, the Insect Queen will also take action. Han Fei frowned. What about the Sea Clan at the peak level of the Dao-seeking state? Shu Xiaoman took a breath and said, "Maybe. So, we need to find a relatively weak place and rush over. After all, the peak level of the Dao-seeking state can't cross the void like the Venerable." Shu Xiaoman looked solemn, although she felt that Han Fei should be able to break through the wall of flames. But who could say for sure? He had to be prepared for a fight. Han Fei's first thought was to ask the old turtle. However, on second thought, what if this old turtle cheated me? Swish. With a thought, little black and little white appeared. Shu Xiaoman was puzzled. Is this the legendary spirit-swallowing fish? Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Do spirit-swallowing fish need legends? Shu Xiaoman shook her head. Oh no, I know there are such creatures, but in this sea area, spirit-swallowing fish are rarely seen. Because it's difficult for them to survive here. Han Fei nodded. Oh, yes, spirit-swallowing fish are indeed very weak. I usually only let my daughter find the way. Under Shu Xiaoman's puzzled gaze, Han Fei immediately touched Little White's head and said, "Daughter, feel it. Which side is the least dangerous?" Little White circled several times before flying to Han Fei's cheek. "Dad, it's all dangerous." Shu Xiaoman's eyes widened. The book doesn't say that spirit-swallowing fish can talk. And this spirit-swallowing fish can call me Dad? Han Fei said, Then where is the least dangerous? Little White glanced at a 30-degree angle to Han Fei's left. There. But go back first. Dad will let you out to play later. Shu Xiaoman was stunned. That's it? Han Fei grinned. My daughter's words are always true. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.